Trap squad, 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 trap squad. Hey, Clickbaity political. Yeah, ThirstTrap, trap squad, squirrel squad. Our mission is critical to speak the truth to the masses. Yeah. We here for the fight. We ain't started, but we here to finish it. Sick and tired of seeing the privilege. Take advantage of the weak and the innocent. So we let a voice be heard. Every single weeknight. Unapologetic. Yeah. Black people, despite this white supremacist system that we live through on a daily, we still throwing up those acorns cause we represent Clickbaity. Yeah. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad, let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad, throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad, yeah I see you, yeah I see you. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad, ThirstTrap, trap squad, trap squad, trap squad, let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad, yeah I see you, yeah I see you. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad, ThirstTrap.
Good evening, everybody. It is I, Dr. Jason Johnson, along with Mondale Robinson.
What's going on, people? Mondale Robinson from the Black Male Voters Project.
And Marcus Farrell.
Marcus Farrell, all the way live. Marcus for America. Love you to death.
It's been 5 years. I'm not changing. I'm just that is literally how it is in my head. So that's what it's going to be. I'm just sharing that with the audience. And I'm Dr. Jason Johnson. We are here, Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap tonight, April 22nd at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please sit down, get yourself a drink, get yourself some popcorn, some pizza, invite your friends. We have a very, very interesting discussion to have with you tonight. So first things first, I have to point out that all of us are dressed a little different but today. I usually have on a blazer because I like being the grown-up. But I was convinced under threat and violence by both Marcus and Mondale that today has to be dress down day. And apparently tapping into long-seated memories and pain from my childhood about being ostracized, I decided to bend to their peer pressure and dress down in a hoodie this evening. So we're going to start. Everybody's going to share a little bit about their hoodies. We're going to start with Mr. Farrell. Mr. Farrell, right now, what is your hoodie? What is your sweatshirt for tonight's show?
Black Voters Matter. Great organization. You might have seen the bus. I believe they've been all the way up to New York, all the way down to Florida. They do amazing work. They work with my former job in New Georgia Project. To be honest with you, I rock this shirt because Black Voters Matter. And it's a constant reminder. And the most awesome part about my shirt is when I go work out in it and I go take my walks or I run in it. I always get a comment about "you damn right," or "that's you're on point," or "why do Black Voters matter?" And always it has an engaging conversation. And also shout out to FAMU, Florida A&M, my hat. And yeah, it is what it is. I'm doing the Black people thing today.
And Black Voters Matter. Who runs Black Voters Matter?
See, you got
Latasha.
Yeah, that's right. Latasha. I'm sorry.
I was about to say, we got to make sure.
I'm sorry, Latasha. I know she's going to see me and trip the hell out.
I was about to say, I was like, I'm going to give it to you. I didn't want to take that, but like, we all know Latasha. Latasha's amazing.
Yes, I'm sorry, Latasha.
She took that brilliance all the way up to Harvard. I mean, Latasha is absolutely fantastic. She is one of my favorite people, certainly in this work, in this industry, and is an unsung hero in this consulting game. I mean, if you want insights about how to turn out people and get folks engaged in the South, Latasha Brown is the person to talk to. Mondale, tell us about your shirt, hoodie, hat, whatever it is you got.
Yeah, so I didn't do a hoodie. I did a ripped up T-shirt because
showing off his testicles, ladies.
No, because it's bike season.
ThirstTrap.
It's bike season, and I decided since Kanye's so important now because he went to visit Trump. And, he's going to make all Black men vote for Trump, that I was going to rip me a shirt up and make it like Kanye wear. Plus, I worked out today. So, yeah, I'm feeling myself.
It's funny. You usually can't hear a flex, and yet that was very obvious. Like I can actually hear the strain and the flex. And Mondale both having to mention that he worked out multiple times and that he's doing the whole Lou Ferrigno, I'm torn out of my shirt. I don't believe your explanation at all, Mondale. I really think you were just trying to flex on both of us, but that's all right. That's fine. You can do what you want to do. I see all your photos with you biking around and everything else like that, caring about the environment. The rest of us don't want to leave an earth for anyone else to take. Just want to let you know that.
Can we change his name to Testosterone for the rest of the night? When we talk about
a Bobby Brown hit, I think it was.
Oh, land the hell.
So I will round it out. I am wearing a t-shirt from Black Girl T-shirts, which I got online. It was custom made, flown from like halfway around the planet. It's got all the Black DC superheroes on it. So it's got Cyborg, it's got Vixen down here, it's got Nubia, the Black Wonder Woman, it's got Power Girl, it's got Green Lantern, John Stewart, Firestorm, all those things. So as many of you guys know, back when we were allowed to walk around outside a lot, I have an extensive collection of superhero t-shirts and sweaters and stuff like that, only with Black superheroes. And this is one of my favorites, in part also because literally they did a limited run. I got it like in late February or something else like that, and that's it. They never make any more of these. So if you see it and you like it, I can send you links, but it's not possible. So I'm the only one with that. Anyway, so with that in mind, we're going to start off today's show. A little bit of an interesting conversation here. I'm intrigued by this, and I've said this to many people. I don't usually watch a lot of the president's town halls or discussions live. I don't need to see that nonsense. It's a lot of disinformation. They're campaign commercials, and they're really not that big a deal to me. But I read about them later on, and I watch people scream about them on Twitter. Today is a big one, and it's going to be our first topic today. Trump versus his doctors and the dog catch and everything else like that. You know, Trump is going head-to-head against everybody in these presses. And we're going to start with Marcus. Marcus, who is Trump fighting with today, and why should we care, and should I be putting down some money?
Well, I'm not going to even go with who he's fighting today. I'm just going to go with the general premise. And I thought about this a little bit. The general premise is if you have a degree and you're educated and you actually know science, then Trump is literally going against you consistently. And he is, I mean, Vince McMahon is now an advisor for the Trump administration, right? So when we're talking about science, and we actually have scripted authors who of the WWF who are running our country right now or advising our country right now, we're in a bad place. Our dear brother Fauci, like our dear doctor, he is literally probably the only one with common sense and probably the one that's standing on the lightest amount of a grounding, and he's probably going to get fired because he keeps bringing up stuff like science, right?
Right.
And you can't do that. Even in the worst case scenario, when we got somebody like Donald Trump actually going after scientists, going after the CDC, going after the NIH over just nonsense, we're at a place right now where we should be scared as Americans. And the only way you can fight that is your own little protest by staying home at all times.
Mondale, what do you think? Donald Trump, real fight, fake fight, girl fight, boy fight?
I mean, like a lot like Marcus said, anytime it's Trump versus science, it's a real fight because people's lives are at stake. And because Marcus started out with the doctors, I'm going to start out with the other part, the dog catcher or the dog breeder. So back in January, when Donald Trump was, touting the magic that was going to make Corona disappear, it also seemed that he really didn't take this pandemic seriously, because at that same time his administration appointed 37-year-old Brian Harrison as the head of a Corona task force. And if you don't know Brian Harrison and his job description, it's because he has no medical background. And before he joined the Trump's administration in 2018, he literally was a dog breeder. He ran a company called Dallas Labradoodles, where he basically manufactured luxury dogs to sell to white people all over the country. So this person is dangerous, not just because of, we're not discounting dog breeders or any job for that matter. What we're saying though,
I'm discounting all of it.
People.
This basically sounds like a straight version of Tiger King.
Right, I mean, seriously, right. And then the ramifications of that is that serious, because one of the first things he did when he was appointed as the head of the task force was to prevent or exclude the FDA commissioner, Stephen Hahn, from participating on the task force.
Right.
So of course the administration denies that happened or it was his decision, but two sources within the administration confirmed that it was him. And who believes anything Trump's administration denied? Usually when they deny something, you might as well go ahead and believe it, which leads me to the doctors, because this is exactly what happened. Trump sends out a tweet saying that CNN misquoted Redford, who is the director of the CDC, when in actuality it wasn't even CNN, it was New York Times. And they didn't misquote him. He tweeted that they quoted him accurately. So the reporter asked Trump why Redford is in the room at the task briefing. And Trump says, oh yeah, Redford, get up here and basically clarify how they misquoted you. Redford gets up there and says, I was quoted accurately. Like, so this began the awkwardness that was that that briefing. And it just got worse because, like Marcus said, Fauci got Trump tried to say that we don't have to worry about, go ahead.
So here's the thing here, and I think this is critical for folks to understand. It's not just that the president doesn't necessarily agree with science, right? He's not been blinded by science. He's not into weird science. He has no science that he believes in one way or another. The interesting thing for me, though, is that I was on a discussion last night. I was on a podcast, a Politicon podcast, and people were discussing whether or not the impact of the president in these nightly press conferences, if that is screwing up America's faith or understanding in science. And I pushed back at the time because I was like, look, outside of those of us who are particularly politically engaged, if I go ask my students, if I go ask random person working at Chipotle, if I go ask anybody who I was in line with at Safeway earlier this evening, most of those people don't know who Dr. Fauci is. Most of those people don't know who any of these individuals are. So while it frightens us that this isn't being managed, is this attack on science really something that matters to average people? It can affect their lives, but is the messaging something that's really hitting them? Because I don't think most people even know who these characters are.
So the answer to that question, I'm going to reply with something simple. How many times do we get our message out to the right people as a Democratic Party? And I say we as a 20-year Democrat, right? How many times do we actually take whatever our fault is, or whatever our opposition's fault is, and actually put it in the community that matters? Our elected officials, from state representative, from city council, all the way up to presidential candidates, they should all be listening who Dr. Fauci is and actually educate. I want Mondale, I'm gonna do something a little different for a second. I'm gonna ask you two a question after you answer Jason's question, but I want to address this. This is very important.
So I would say,
how many people? Real quick question. Go ahead. This is important. How many people do you think Donald Trump has in his administration that actually talk to him about the amount of African Americans that are affected by the COVID virus? How many people do you think are advising him or have said anything to him about it? That's a question that I want to ask because it gets to the gist of what we're dealing with.
Yeah, so I think, the answer to both of those questions are no. No, it doesn't apply. No, it doesn't affect the average person's life. I mean, and what they're thinking about. But it does affect their lives, but they're not thinking about it, and it's not going to make an effect on how the decision they feel about Trump. What I will say, though, is people, I think more people know about Fauci than we give credit, i.e., he had cupcakes with his face on them and they sold out immediately. So people know who he is.
Where was this cupcake thing? Because I didn't get any, and I'm upset.
Well, yeah. So it's probably because you're in the DMV and it was in New York. So but what I'm saying though is like Donald Trump's the backfire of Donald Trump politicizing COVID is that people normally wouldn't know, i.e., a doctor in an administration has become a notable figure. So I think people do know, more people than we give credit, not enough to that his name is a household name. But and Marcus, to your question, I would say none. And because Donald Trump does not care to hear about Black people until it becomes a talking point that he can use against the Democrats.
So I'm gonna do my Kanye thing here. I'm gonna spin off of Mondale's flex from earlier. Full Kanye voice 2004. Donald Trump doesn't care about Black people. He never has. So there's no reason. I mean, there's nobody on his staff who's telling him about Black people one way or another. He doesn't care. He probably hears mostly about black people from Stephen Miller, and we know what Stephen Miller thinks of anyone who is not white and Christian. That doesn't surprise me, but it does lead sort of to our second topic. You know, a lot of times there have been writings and columns and articles talking about the death rates and the influence of COVID. I literally, and I think this is important. This is, you know, similar to say HIV maybe 25 years ago, or other diseases or mental illness today. I think it's really important that we don't stigmatize having COVID. That we're not afraid if you have COVID, you shouldn't be afraid to say that. And I've been really happy to see large numbers of public figures, you know, African Americans, whether it's Idris Elba, well, it's not African American, but, you know, black celebrities like Idris Elba or DeRay McKesson is an activist, you know, people coming forward and saying, hey, I got tested, or yes, I had COVID, or Clay Kane on Sirius XM Urban View. I've been very happy to see prominent African Americans coming forward and talking about what it's been like to deal with this illness. But I want to hit you guys with this question. What is it like sort of being in this space? The usual enemy that African Americans have to face is racism, systematic or individual. But now we have another unseen enemy out there that's killing us at a higher rate. Just from a psychological standpoint, how do you think this is really sort of playing out with the black community, with just the man and woman on the street? Once you get past the fear of losing your job, what's it like being black with a brand new silent killer out there? Mondale.
So, Jason, pertinent question, especially since yesterday, a study was published in the Journal of American Medical Association that basically chronicled which comorbidities are present in people that are being hospitalized. It's a large study.
Now, Mondale, I want to step back for a second. Explain comorbidities. That we don't want to ever talk over people. What does that mean?
So basically, we're talking about other characteristics or other sicknesses that are present in people, and it's more than one of them. So the three that were top were obesity, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes. Mm-hmm. So now, if you think about these, it explains why Black people are dying at a higher rate from COVID, because all of these, you know, comorbidities were present in these people in the hospital, 5,700 studies, and I think 57 of them had hypertension, another 40% also had diabetes. And I mean, like, the list was so long and the percentage was so high. And then to top it off, 20% of those people were dying, right? So the deaths were all linked to these comorbidities. Now you got to couple that with the fact that there's been studies that show that, for instance, the American Diabetes Association said, you know, there's racism is a factor to type 2 diabetes, right? This is published in their
racism is killing us.
Racism is killing us. Then there's a study in the European Journal of Public Health that said implicit and explicit racism are both factors in, you know, in all types of sicknesses,
stress,
and
hypertension,
exactly, obesity as well, right?
Access to healthcare,
and they're all that, and social economic reasons. And then you got to couple that, Jason, with the fact that we are also targeted by police and security guards for wearing masks. So trying to be safe is even dangerous when you're Black. Then you top that with the fact that we're more likely to be in these low wage jobs, which means we're more likely to be exposed to it. And you understand that COVID is a serious diagnosis for Black people on top of the Blackness that we live in.
Marcus.
You know, you talk about how does it feel as a Black person, I can't speak for everybody. I learned my lesson on that one. So
yeah, you can. Yeah, I do it all the time.
I'll just go for me. When I do my walk here in Atlanta, it's one of the first times in my life where, like, I see anybody, and that includes the gentrifying Old Fourth Ward, and I see a lot of white people walking around and working out, and instead of them crossing the street, I cross the street,
right?
And instead of them being the, like, and I see it in folks' eyes. I see it in white people's eyes. I see it in Black people's eyes. And when I see a Black person, it's almost like I want to stop and have a conversation and be like, "Man, bro, how you doing?" Every single time, how you doing, right? How you holding up? So to be honest with you, I think about it like this right here. Just like Mondale said, the biggest thing with me is not only like intervene and making sure that you have your mask on and making sure that you take the proper precautions, but the biggest thing for me is the perception of other human beings towards my body while I have a mask on. It's one of the scariest things that I could ever imagine as a black man. And I go through it on a daily basis now, no matter where I go, because I have a mask on. It scares the living crap out of me because I don't know in the middle of Georgia. And if I leave the city and go to a grocery store that might have toilet tissue, or if I go to a grocery store that might have vegetables, right? And I go to a random store in a white city, I'm still concerned about my blackness. And maybe I'm overdoing it, but I just don't trust our criminal justice system, and I don't trust the understanding of what COVID is for everybody right now.
So here's the thing. I've been running around with masks for a long time. We all wear the mask. Mask on, mask off. I don't fear where I go with my mask. Now, that may be a reflection of where I happen to live in the country. It might be the fact that, like, I don't feel a heightened sense of danger from police now than I did before. It's and I guess this is sort of part of what I've thought about this. This is all through, you know, some previous protests and things like that. A police officer that means to cause you harm is going to cause you harm regardless of what you do. It doesn't matter if you talk to them politely. It doesn't matter if you're mean to them. It doesn't matter if you're rude to them. It doesn't matter if you're kind, whatever. If they want you dead, they're going to try and shoot you. And whether I have a mask on or not, I mean, look, I've had guns pulled on me by police officers for parking behind my own house. So I don't usually have that kind of fear. But I will say this, and this has sort of struck me, sort of being black on a coronavirus, is I went to the grocery store today, right before the show, and I was doing some shopping for both me and my neighbors. My neighbors just had a kid. They have a baby that's 25 days old. So when there's groceries to be bought, I tend to buy them and take them to them. I don't want them going outside with a newborn child. And I do think about the fact that when I go to the big, nice grocery stores, if I go to a Whole Foods, if I go to a nice Shoppers Food Warehouse, right? It's big, it's open, it's spacious. And I see a lot of times the black workers there have real hit and miss protection. Some of those places they have masks, some of them they don't. Some of those places they have sneeze guards, some of them they don't. But when I go to the grungy little hood, international, you know, Asian, African, and Latino immigrant grocery store, they hand out gloves to everybody. Everybody there has a mask. So what I tend to fear when I go out now is just thinking about the lack of concern for Black lives from an institutional and capitalistic standpoint. I see people's lives just basically being sacrificed right now so that people can get, you know, pistachio ice cream. And that worries me more than a cop putting a bullet through my chest, because that cop was always there and that cop's always going to be there. I want to follow up with this. When's the last time you were out? Like Marcus just talked about taking walks. When's the last time you were out wearing a mask, and did you notice anybody responding to you differently?
So I live in a part of the DMV, you know, DC, Maryland, Virginia area that is, you know, it's a diverse area, mostly Asian and Middle Easterns out here. But, you know, I don't interact with people anyway on the street, simply because I'm a 6-foot Black man, and then anything could be misconstrued. And so I try to keep my distance anyway. I tell people all the time, like the 6-foot social distancing thing, it's new to the world, except for Black men. The world's been 6 feet away from us. Like every time they see us, they get 6 feet or more away from us. So in that context, people are still keeping that distance from me, and I'm okay with that. The extra stairs in the grocery store is part of buying bread for me. So nothing different.
If I may, just real quick, first off, look at Mondale's name. Yes, that's him. Second thing is, so you know, a few of my best friends are white folks, and one of my best friends who was in my wedding at one point, his name is Dallas Baxter, and he talked about, he's a white guy, and he talked about the white Publix and the Black Publix, right?
Again, now, Marcus, I want you to, I'm not trying to be silly, but Publix, what's Publix? Because we might have some Albertsons and some Vons people out there.
Yeah, Publix is a grocery store in the South, right?
Okay.
And it ranges, and it has different ranges.
Right.
And any Publix pre-coronavirus was always a really good place to go shopping, right? It might be a little ratchet looking, but it still had everything. But the Publix that is in Killearn Lakes, and that's a white neighborhood in Tallahassee, Florida, is always stocked. And he had a problem with it because he's like, I go to a certain Publix because my favorite wing place is right next to it. And I go get my to-go order wings, and that wing place stayed open during the coronavirus. So he goes to Publix while he shops, and he went to the black Publix, and there was nothing there. So it's starting to tell, it's showing me priorities of capitalism in general, right? And if it affects African Americans, and we spend the same amount of money in the grocery store, y'all got to think about that. We might even spend more money than the white grocery store, because we're going in there at all times using all the resources that we have to make sure that our families are fed, and white folks kind of go out a little bit more. I'm interested in this. So this is an important step that I wanted to bring up about like how all the white grocery stores in America are filled, and like the places, the grocery stores that are in the same chain.
Right.
And not the silo, I mean, just not to harken back to a topic that we got to left, but what Marcus just said is connected to obesity, hypertension,
right,
and also other sicknesses, type 2 diabetes, lack of food, lack of quality food, fresh vegetables, all of that plays into what we're talking about.
So I want to add something here, and for all of you guys who are watching out there, we like to do this for engagement. You guys want to tweet, you want to send us questions on our chat one way or another. I love this game. This is something I actually do with my students all the time, especially since we're talking about public stuff, different kinds of places. You don't have to tell us where you are. You don't have to tell us what part of the country you're from. Just on our chat, tell us what your grocery store is. We'll figure it out from that. If you say Pathmark, we know it's Jersey. If you say Vons or Albertsons, we know you in California. If you say HEB, right, we know you in Texas. So that's going to be our way of finding out where the audience is. Just send us what your grocery store is. And if we've never heard of it, because it's funny, like, I just heard of, and you guys might have heard about, I just heard about Fiesta. Fiesta apparently is a big thing in Texas.
It is in Houston. Oh yeah, it's all over Houston.
See, I just heard about that from a friend of mine today. She's like, you didn't even hear that? I was like, I know about Fiesta. I know Fred Meyer in the Pacific Northwest. So on the chat, in addition to questions, shoot us what your grocery store is. I'll know if it's Piggly Wiggly. I'll know if it's Bi-Lo. I want to hear some of the obscure ones we haven't heard.
We got a problem, guys. Our first response was Wegman, so we know we got a very bougie audience. Somebody said Wegman.
That's basically just a suburban Whole Foods. You don't fool us with your Wegmans. You only go to Wegmans when Whole Foods is too far away. I'm not convinced by any of that.
We have a West Coast person saying Safeway, and we have a East Coast person saying Costco. So we can't.
Okay, Costco. I want to hear some Vons. I want to hear some Ralphs. If I hear a Tops, I'll trip out because I haven't seen a Tops in a long time. Those were only up in Cleveland and Pittsburgh where I was. So let's actually
Hobbly Wobbly
because I think this is really key. So we're talking about grocery stores and food and everything else like that. Big report out today that you've got meat and poultry plants where dozens of staffers, people working with the meat, packaging the meat, working in management, have coronavirus. You've got meat packing plants and vegetable processing places being shut down. You've got farm workers getting hurt. Y'all, are we about to head to like a real supply chain food crisis? Marcus, what do you think?
Grow your tomatoes, grow your potatoes. There's a couple of plants that I want to talk. I'm just joking. Literally.
We know what you grow, Marcus. I don't know if it's tomatoes.
Oh, hey.
It's legal. It's legal.
Hey, listen, the main thing we need to consider, not putting my tinfoil hat theory person on, but I will say this right here. And a lot of us don't like mentioning Killer Mike, but Killer Mike is a friend of mine, and Killer Mike always says, are you ready for the apocalypse? And it doesn't matter what you say, there is like a homegrown apocalypse in the box that you could do in your own house.
Right.
You can grow your own food, right? You can take care of yourself. How many people know how to go fishing? How many people out there really know how to like skin a deer? Or how many people know how to grow celery? That's a part of our roots as African Americans, right? Mm-hmm. We are from a farming culture, and we've lost a lot of that. So because I'm completely about preparing ourselves. And personally, I don't think that we're prepared for what might happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So like, all I can say is buy gold, buy silver, don't buy oil, grow your own stuff.
Mondale,
so
you ready to grow your own stuff? What you got at the house? Well,
I live in an apartment building, so unfortunately I have nothing growing right now. I do like to play in the dirt. When I was true story, when I was in law school, I used to grow vegetables. So, you know, I love to grow, and also I had an eggplant farm in Kenya. So that's that. I will.
Farm in Kenya.
All right, you can't just like skip that story.
Yeah, wait,
First off,
pause.
why were you in Kenya and how did you start an eggplant farm? We need to hear this. I did not know this story at all.
So the farm wasn't
just be saying stuff. Yeah, and I was hanging out with Jay-Z yesterday. So what is this?
So first of all, I didn't start the farm. The farm was actually purchased from a family in Kenya out it was a shamba, supposed to be like a weekend thing for the family. And I went in on the farm. So yeah, so the farm was more than eggplants, but eggplants was the cash crop of the farm. So
You must have been
yeah.
cute.
And I was in Kenya because I love Africa, and I've not taken this bracelet off in 12 years.
Okay, so hold on. See, usually when I hear like a bunch of people going in on something, it's for like a pizza. Apparently you and a bunch of people went in on buying a farm. How did you end up just going in on buying a farm? Like, was it on like African farms? Like, how did this happen? So you skipped to the eggplant part and forgot how you had the farm.
Well, I have because I go to the continent often. I used to go to the continent after every election. I would just disappear to Africa for a month and a half. Like, and doing that, I also had like people that became family to me. So when that family was trying to purchase a farm, I actually just, assisted with that, made that happen.
Okay.
That's how that happened.
Oh,
But
I miss traveling.
I miss traveling. My passport is growing cobs right now. But you asked an important question, Jason, because we're in a dangerous space as it pertains to food and hunger. There's experts right now saying that we're on the brink of a biblical like hunger or famine, where 265 million people by the end of this year will be subjected to acute hunger. And that is not a small thing. That is, and some of those people, a large portion of those people are Black in Africa, but also here in this country and on this continent too, right? So we should use that stat alone to make the case for a stronger safety net, and to ensure that, we're not just talking about working class and our policies, we're talking about plain old poor people in general. And, so folk that are living off that $1,200 or those that are waiting and may never come, we watch our government pass another $455 billion. That's $500 billion again for businesses when we can't even give people a livable wage from this government.
And I want to add to this because I think the idea of a food crisis is something that none of us on this show have had to experience as a larger national phenomenon. We may have grown up in homes where food might have been scarce from time to time. Some of us may have had those experiences, but that's entirely different. There's a difference between like my personal cupboard is bare and going to the grocery store and the entire grocery store is bare. And if we have a breakdown in supply chains, if we have, due to sickness, due to blocks to immigration, if there are not people in this country who can harvest and plant crops this summer, if we have the hurricane season we're talking about, like this is not biblical in a hyperbolic sense. We really could be looking at a country that already has a large percentage of people who are food insecure, who literally can't get access to food. And I want to mention this. I wonder if each of you guys just jump in if you've had this experience. When I go to the grocery store, one of the other things that I've noticed when I go in there is I notice what has and has not been purchased, right? Like there's always vegetables. There's always vegetables, and there's always a lot of soda. Ain't nobody buying soda during coronavirus. I have no trouble. Today for lunch, I made myself a cauliflower steak sandwich with Romesco sauce that I made on my own and a side of greens and rice, right? If you want to just eat vegetables, you're going to have plenty of stuff because that's still at the grocery stores. But there's a run on meat going on right now. The pastas are gone. In other words, the kind of items at the grocery store that low-skilled people who don't know how to cook need are the ones that are running out first. What have you guys noticed at your grocery stores?
What I've noticed is water. What I've noticed is it's still toiletries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I've noticed is turkey burgers, right? Like it's like that's the craziest
thing.
Yeah. In my local Costco, I noticed all the turkey burgers was gone, but you can get you a cow in a second. But more importantly, man, I shout out to my grandma Rosie. She passed away a couple of years ago, and I remember her saying, "You guys ain't got no food in the house." She came back, and ironically, she was a sharecropper and then a lunchroom lady in Mississippi. And she came home from work one day and she was like, there's no food in the house. And she went outside and she rang a chicken. Do I need to explain that one?
Yes, you do. you do, because
Not too graphic though.
Context, but that's because I'm the bourgeois suburban one here. So please.
Not too graphic though.
So it's okay. So chicken comes from a chicken. And you got the chicken, right? And she rang it. So she just rang the chicken's neck and then she chopped the chicken. Anyway, she plucked the chicken and and I had been playing with that chicken earlier that day. Hanging chicken, right? But what I'm saying to you is like back to our culture, right? There's a lot of stuff in Black folks' DNA that's right there on the surface, like growing crops, like farming. And shout out to all the Georgia farmers and the Black farmers all around the nation. Right. Yeah, but so to answer your question, I'm not really worried about a shortage because I'm a guy with a shotgun and a gun, and I will go out and find my food until the food runs out. The problem is that America and Black Americans in general aren't ready for that. We're used to hunting for groceries, so I'm concerned about maybe some basic training.
So for me, Jason, what I'm seeing a shortage of in my store, both the one here and the one in Atlanta, when I go to the store, is grits. I love grits. I'm a low country boy from North Carolina, southeast part of North Carolina. So grits is not just a breakfast staple, it's a staple for dinner if you're cooking shrimp and grits. So I've noticed that there's been tons of oatmeal and polenta, and grits are going all over here in Virginia and also in Georgia. Also, I've noticed there's a super shortage on ring lights.
On what?
Ring lights, the diva lights that people use to like put on makeup, but it's now being used for people doing live videos. So there's none in Best Buy, Walmart, Target, or anywhere. So that part.
So here's an interesting thing about that. Now I have lights from campus that I use and still trying to get those things arranged for student stuff like that I do. Here's what's interesting though, and this is in part, I don't own a gun, which I guess I probably shouldn't say publicly, but no one knows where I live. I don't own a gun. I know how to shoot one, not as well as either of these brothers here who are both veterans, but I do know actually how to shoot a gun. I've gone to rifle range or whatever. But probably from my like nerdy sci-fi background, I'm always looking at these like post-apocalyptic, Walking Dead kind of shows. And I've always tried to figure out like, all right, look, if the apocalypse comes, what do I actually know how to do, right? Because they're going to kill everybody who can't do something. What do I know how to do that other people don't know how to do?
Talk noise.
Huh?
Talk
noise. I can talk noise. I know how to steal a car. You know
that.
Oh! I know how to steal a car.
Oh! Wait a minute. Pause for it.
I know how to steal a car.
Knows how?
I know how to steal a car. I know how to steal a car.
He hasn't done,
mind you, if the gas runs out, it doesn't matter. But
he hasn't stolen a car. I'm just gonna say that.
Oh no, I have not stolen a car. I know how. I know how to steal a car. I know how to find and interpret and decipher different kinds of medicines, right? And I know some basic stuff about farming. But those are probably like all right, we're leaving planet Earth, we got to start a new thing. What are the 3 skills you have to get on the ship kind of skills that I have, right? I can steal stuff, I can break into things, and I know some basics about medicine, right? In addition to, knowing history or whatever. So I'm gonna hit you with this, Marcus. Apocalypse happens, right? The ship is loading up. What are the 3 skills that you got that we're gonna save you during the American apocalypse? The boat's about to leave, man. What do you know? What are your skills?
So I'm a devil doc, meaning that I'm a hospital corpsman, which means that I was a military medic.
That's right. That's right.
So as far as I'm concerned, if you get shot, cut, bleed, or anything, I got you. And I've delivered babies, and I've done toenail procedures to make sure that infected toenails have came off. Like I'm valuable in some way. Number 2, yes, I'm definitely.
That's actually 3 right off the top. So I'm intrigued as to what number 2 is.
Yeah, number 2. I worked at an abortion clinic because everybody doesn't want to have babies, even though in the apocalypse we're going to try to like push babies. I think some people don't like a lot of people who they might have had So I have
You don't have to reveal nothing, man. We're just.
I'll leave it alone, but I am a very big abortion advocate because I've done it before. And the last thing is, I got a mouthpiece, and I'm right here, just like you and Mondale.
Okay. Mindale, what you got? Plane's about to leave. 3 skill sets as to how you get on the plane. Otherwise, you're gonna have to stay here with the rest of the people after the rapture.
I'm gonna try to trade my plane ticket for Marcus' boat ticket because I'm good with wood. I can make furniture. I make furniture out of recycled pallets. So
Are you serious?
So I'll probably help make the boat and also build walls so people can have privacy on the boat. The second thing I'm good at is sewing. Every Marine should be a sewer. I can sew. So that means I can provide clothing for folk. And then the last thing is I like to write. So I can create stories for the kids that are, post-apocalyptic, so they can have some kind of hope.
Mondale is Jesus.
So in other words, I can get y'all some fake medicine. Marcus can take care of abortions, and Mondale can make sure we all have Gordon Gartrell shirts in the apocalypse. So that seems like a pretty good deal. If anything goes left, we're all going to be taken care of. So speaking of which, this moves to our next topic. If there's going to be ground zero for the apocalypse, it might be in the ATL or the South in general, because we're hearing more and more of these governors saying, open it up like the floodgates, Moses water, whatever it is. And yet at the same time, you've got political leaders like Stacey Abrams, Keisha Lance Bottoms, local officials who are like, I don't care what the state says, we ain't opening up, or if things are open, we're gonna stay at work. So not the political implications. We know the economic implications. We know what's going to go on and why Brian Kemp has this whole plan, because he basically wants to take people off of unemployment. But just on the street level, do you really think the South is going to open up tomorrow? Do you really think in the next 6 or 7 hours, folks are just going to start running through the streets like they were before? Or do you think this is a big fail?
Well, first, I live in Old Fourth Ward. And if you have no idea where that is, Old Fourth Ward is where Martin Luther King's body is laid right now. Martin and Coretta Scott King, his body is laid right now. I can walk maybe 2 minutes down from where I stay right now and go pay reverence to leaders that lived my whole lifetime. With that being said, that's also a Black Mecca.
Right.
And there's multiple barbershops on Auburn Avenue and Edgemont. Edgemont. Right? There's the Edgewood, sorry.
Edgewood, yeah. It's where Joystick is, it's where the church is, yeah.
Yeah, so I live close to it, and I'm not going to say anything until I see what brothers and sisters plan on doing. I've talked to a couple of barbershop owners, and every barbershop owner that I know here in Atlanta is like, nah, we're not doing that.
Right.
And I'm so proud of them because they get it on an organic level.
Yeah.
Like, actually, I had a conversation with my barber, and my barber said to me, who works on Auburn Avenue, right, like literally a block away from Martin's resting place. He said to me, "There's no way in hell that I'm opening up, only because I might have it." And it was and even though it wasn't nuanced, it was the most nuanced answer that I heard from somebody who had nothing to do with politics,
right,
but more so to do with just, I live life and I'm not trying to expand this stuff because Black folks are the first ones that are going to catch it. So he decided he's not going to open up. So as far as I'm concerned, listen,
shout out to your barber.
Yeah, shout out to my barber. We'll go into barbershops later on, but shout out to my barber. And I need a haircut. Yeah, I mentioned.
So here's the thing, and I had this conversation. I'm gonna kick this to Mondo in a second. So I was talking to a really good friend of mine who lives in Dallas today, and so that's the Dallas metropolitan area. And I was asking her, what's the downtown like versus now? Because again, Texas is one of those places where people are fighting and they're protesting and they're showing up. And she said to me, look, these things, you can open things up. It's not going to change how people operate. She's a lawyer. She's like, I have been doing court cases on Zoom. I've been advocating for clients on Zoom. I'm having meetings. She's like, in fact, for me, I like the fact that I don't have to actually go down to the jail now. She's like, I can talk to my clients on Zoom. I can advocate for them with the judges. And she's like, and quite frankly, even when this is over, like there may be some days where I would rather do this on Zoom if it's just easier for my day to go through. So I think even in some instances, you know, opening things up isn't necessarily going to change. And I'll give you another quick example. I go to Mondale. Tomorrow, my cleaning person is coming. Now, part of that is because I want to get my house through a complete like coronavirus cleanup. Like she gonna do the doorknobs and everything and the whole like wash the floors, whatever.
Pause.
What?
Jason,
What?
you have a cleaning person. I got black ass up every day to clean up my house. So shout out to whatever you doing right now, because me on some real stuff, I have to dust off my own
Shout out, and I'm gonna show this to her tomorrow. Shout out to my cleaning person, Daphne, who is awesome. She's a sister in her late 30s. It's her own franchise. It's her own business. She's the most hustling, creative person I know. I enjoy having my cleaning lady here because we always have these great political conversations. She was trying to get me to. She's into Bitcoin. She was a Bernie supporter, and she was actually when I texted her. Yeah, she's a Bernie supporter. And when I texted her, I was like, hey, can you come and do the cleanup tomorrow? She's like, yeah, sure. She's like, oh, by the way, she's like, I got to deal with a company to get some wholesale masks. So if you know anybody who needs an N95 mask, like my cleaning person is freaking awesome. I straight up kind of miss conversations. So it's not just a clean. It's going to be, we get to talk for a couple hours because she's like a freaking genius and a business hustler. But like, objectively speaking, I also consider it, and my mother and I talked about this, my brother and I talked about this, it's also a way of being supportive of the economy, right? Like my barbers haven't made any money off of me in 6 weeks. I'm shaving my own head, I'm cutting my own beard. And that's because, you know, bringing them over here, whatever, is too difficult. But like, I like, to the degree that I'm still blessed and able to do so, I'm gonna keep trying to employ the people who I've employed, right? And so having my cleaning person come over, it not only gets my house clean in a thorough way that I can't necessarily manage, but two, like, you know, I'm sure she's got other clients who've dropped her. And
Mondale, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mondale, Jason, I got a question for both of y'all. It's a very black male question. How much is acceptable right now for a haircut? $20, $40, $60? What's the acceptable price during coronavirus for a haircut?
What's the corona cost? What do you think, Mondale?
Well, so first of all, if people watching, they may notice that every Thursday I have a new haircut. I actually cut my own hair. So my barber, like, it's absolutely horrible. You can't see it, but I'm telling you, I'm certain it's jacked up. So I don't pay anything other than the electricity I use.
Well, what would be an acceptable cost, brother?
Well, I mean, my thought and my cost is also, you know, slanted because I can do it myself for nothing. So what I'm going to say is something that's going to be offensive to barbers, and I don't want to do that because they may be receiving something.
You have to be offensive. You have to show your haircut. You have to show where it's messed up at. You have to show exactly where your haircut's messed up at.
It's not really messed up, but
it's not gonna be messed up. Mine ain't got no messed up haircut. He ain't gonna come on the air and have a messed up haircut. So we know that.
So in respect, out of respect for people that do hair, $200 is acceptable right now because of the 6 weeks they've missed.
Now I want to ask this also, just like you guys were sending in on our chat, and thank you guys again for watching and bringing your friends and everything else like that to watch Clickbaity. Those of you who also were giving in, like, what's your grocery store, your HEB, your Albertsons, your Piggly Wiggly, your Giant Eagle, everything else like that. Shout out especially if any of you guys cut hair. I would like to know the answer to that from some of y'all out in the audience. Like, what would you charge for a haircut today? Because my guess is this. Now, I haven't done it, right? And again, I don't have stylized hair. I don't have a taper. I don't have a fade. I'm bald, and then just keep this, you know, semblance of what I got here kind of flowing on the side. If I have my barber come to my house, right? If he was actually going to come to my house, and I, like most professional black men in America, I got two barbers. You got the one that's close to your house. You got the one that's close to your job. So you always have an emergency barber. I got two barbers. If he was going to come to my house, I'd probably pay my barber about $45. I would, because he's spending gas. He's coming to my house. He's putting on a mask. He's putting on gloves. I would pay him about $45 for the haircut. That's the only way I think it would be fair. And my usual cost in a haircut, and I have a barber, shout out to my barber. who's on Marietta Street in downtown Atlanta, Flex. I hope Flex's store is still open. Flex always did me well. Right down the street from CNN. So any of you guys in Atlanta who are watching, go give Flex a business. But like the cost when I would pay Flex in Atlanta or pay York here or Amir here, those are my 3 barbers, is usually between $30 and $35 anyway. So having somebody come to my house is really just an extra $15 that I will pay them, and you're gonna pay that markup for Grubhub.
I mean, plus you have to. So my thing is like a normal haircut, and I have more to get cut than you do, Jason, a little bit. So it's $40. It's $40 anyway. Then you have to tip the barber, right? So like, you're already talking $55 to $60. But then I'm thinking if someone comes to your house, then you're responsible for the Uber to and from, right?
Right.
So like so I'm thinking, that's why I said 200. It sounded far-fetched, but if you think about it, someone is putting themselves at risk to come out, not to mention, the travel and also the time for traveling to and from. So I believe that even when I'm doing campaign work, I feel like when I'm paying canvassers, I don't just pay them for the doors they knock, I pay them for the time they travel to the doors and the time they travel back. So paying people for their time.
Jason,
last time I heard somebody getting a $200 haircut, it was John Edwards on the tarmac in the 2008 election, and that ended up costing him some votes.
Jason, can I do this before? For all of our viewers, I'm willing to match you $100.
Uh-oh.
Yes. The first person that I'm feeling, I'm willing to match whoever runs with us $100 to find me a barber and come with me if you're in Atlanta, or take a real video of you getting your hair cut. I'll pay that barber $100. And the only
Cash App, Zelle, whatever. You will pay somebody $100. You will pay a barber $100 just to have video of them cutting somebody's hair.
Just to pay video, yes. Just to pay video of them cutting someone's hair. I think it's that important. Here's the reason why. Our barbers are our community.
That is true.
It's the only place that Black men can literally have a safe space. And even if the space is not a beautiful thing.
Yo, we're hitting background. Is that Mondale or Marcus? Who's hitting the background?
It's Marcus.
Okay, you got it, man.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Keep going.
Yeah, I'm willing to go up to 100 for a haircut after this show.
So here's what I would say. Remember what your barber said about like not getting himself infected or infecting anyone else, and the reason he's not going to open. So just send that barber, just choose a barber and send $100 to him, and save the haircut video. Send it to your barber because he does your good service.
So who wants to go half on me on making a barber, some random barber, a little money for cutting some hair right now?
I'll say this. I want them all to look. I don't see why this can't be something that everybody can participate in. Barbers, just send us your stuff. Send us your stuff. Send us your stuff where you're going to be operating. We'll try and connect you with people. Because I also think, look, just real talk, there's got to be people out there. And this is one of the things that we talked about. I talked about earlier with just this opening and closing. There's probably folks out there. Forget individuals. We're all Black men who ain't got kids, right? So, and we're at our own homes, et cetera, et cetera. There are families right now with 12, 13-year-old boys and girls, 18, 19-year-old kids, mothers and husbands who all need haircuts, who probably don't even realize that there are barbers who will do house calls. So if you're a barber that will do house calls and you can protect yourself and you have hands and gloves, chat with us. We'll connect you, because I bet you there's a family that would be happy to pay you $100 off rip just to cut everybody's hair in the house. Right? And a lot of people don't even know that's available.
And more importantly, they are political standards in our community. Right. Every single person who's cutting hair right now is a Black barber, whether woman or male. Like, they are literally political standards, and me giving them whatever or us shouting them out has zero to do with how valuable they are to our community.
And I'll say this before we move to our next topic. I think this is key. The irony here that we've been spending this time talking about barbershops, the economic, the cultural, the political, the emotional impact of it. And I have to say this because it's funny, because Marcus and I used to talk about this when we were working on projects before, that we never like the way that sometimes non-Black political consultants and candidates fetishize barbershops, right? They think that that's the only place you can find Black people. Barbershops. We're just gonna go to a barbershop. I'm just gonna show up at a hair salon. I'm Elizabeth Warren. I'm Joe Biden. I'm Kamala Harris. I'm just gonna show up at a hair salon. I'm just gonna show up at a barbershop, and it annoyed us because we thought it was exploitative. The reality is, though, these places are of importance, but not just for candidates to show up and chat. They're an important place for the exchange of safety, ideas, grooming, which is so key to our community, and we can't let something like that fall by the wayside just because of social distancing. I can tell you, look, I don't think I've ever gotten a job. I don't know about y'all. I've never gotten a job at a barbershop, but I've offered people jobs at barbershops. I've never gotten, an opportunity walking out of a barbershop, but I've offered people opportunities at barbershops. I've given students my phone number if they were interested in going to college. I've given people information about how to find scholarships for their kids in school. They are a place that we can go and exchange ideas and information where we don't have to worry about not only physical threat, but even the emotional threat, because it is an environment in which to share.
Yeah, and my thing about it is
that I'm down.
My thing is, here's my thing. I believe, like Jason, I think you guys were right when you were talking about the exploitative nature about candidates going to barbershops. And I say that because we know that candidates have the tendency, campaigns, political parties, to show up during election seasons and then disappear when it's not an election. Right. And that to me is transactional in a way that creates a lot of harm, not just for that barber, but his reputation or her representation.
Representational reputation, yes.
Both of them. So, but the problem with that is the barbershop, like you guys said, it is a standard and also a foundation in our community. That's not a new thing. It's as old as, Black people being in America. Initially, we know we worked in the barbershops, but couldn't get our haircuts there because it was white business folk and slave owners, right? So, but then when it did become our space, it's a space that shouldn't be taken lightly, and it shouldn't be the first step for candidates to introduce themselves to our community because it's hollow ground.
Now, speaking of, we want to make sure we get to this as we sort of wrap up, because we always have our light topic. Speaking of a place where people just show up and they don't have to come in and announce, we want to talk a little bit. We want to talk a little bit about the MAGA prince himself, Tom Brady. Now, apparently there's a story out there that Tom Brady has now moved down to Tampa Bay, where he is, look, and I hate to say this. As a matter of fact, I will say this. Between Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay and Rob Gronkowski, Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be a fantastic team this year. Fine, Marcus, you're right. My only satisfaction with that is we ain't getting no football in 2020, so it won't matter. Anyway, the point is, Tom Brady apparently just walked into someone's house by accident. He was heading to the offensive coordinator's house, which is funny because that's a Black man. So a white guy was looking for a Black dude, walked into the wrong person's house, and survived. And I just want to say real quick, because we only got a couple minutes, just rapid fire real quick. Do you think that would happen to you, Mondale Robinson, if you just in a very, very nice, wealthy neighborhood walked into someone's home accidentally?
And Tom Brady's continuing the legacy of showing us how wonderful it is to be white and white male, because he could just walk in somebody's house, not drop his bags down, and walk out laughing.
Yes. It must be nice. It's very Brady. What about you, Marcus? Since I already got in my Tampa Bucs shade. I don't even have to bother with Jacksonville.
First off, Jacksonville Jaguars, we lose every time. Shout out to the losers. Listen, Tom Brady's down there in Tampa living his best life. And to be honest with you, like, y'all can hate it or y'all can love it, but at the end of the day,
I prefer hate.
Tom Brady is not like, I mean, when you walk into somebody else's apartment,
house,
blatantly, and Tom Brady is winning. That's all I say.
Look, Botham Jean was murdered in his own house eating ice cream. So we, by a cop who claims that she couldn't figure out where she was going. So clearly, Tom Brady is leaving an incredibly charmed life that he can do these sorts of things, especially, and let's also put this in context. This is Florida freaking stand your ground state. stand your ground, right?
So do you want
people can be shot by looking at you wrong.
So do you want Tom Brady to be shot?
That's not what he
No,
said.
I am not suggesting that at all, Marcus Farrell. I'm not suggesting that I want Tom Brady to be shot at all. I want him to play as much football as he can so that he can be embarrassed and shamed for the MAGA supporting individual that he happens to be. That being said, I had to throw in an important amount of Patriot shade because I am political about my sports. Thank you guys so very much for tuning into the show tonight. We're going to do this real quick before I hit my final thought for the day. We're each going to rotate with a final thought for the next couple weeks. It's a new idea. Marcus, where can people find you on the Twitters and the Instagram?
Marcus for America, Twitter and Instagram, and Marcus Farrell on Facebook.
And Mondale Robinson, where can people find you on the Twitters and the Instagram?
On Twitter, you can find me at I am Mondale Robinson, and on Instagram, I'm the same person. So please check us out.
Mondale is the same person no matter where you go. That's what makes him special. So I want to share something tonight, a little bit about mental health. And we talked before, I said, look, coronavirus is something that we shouldn't be avoiding. If you have coronavirus, if you know people who have coronavirus, share it. Information is power. Information also eliminates stigma. And one of the things that I also want to help people talk about and think about today is depression. Coronavirus is hard on a lot of us. It's hard on some people financially, but it's hard on a lot of people psychologically. Being indoors all day, being away from loved ones, being away from family members who may be sick, being away from your coworkers and your friends and significant others is extremely challenging, extremely difficult. And I can say, as somebody who's a very, very sociable person and very extroverted, that I have had some days where I'm really down. I've had some days where I am just exceptionally sad, and it is hard to get out of bed every day and stay motivated when you can't see people, when you can't see loved ones. So I want to point out to everybody, there's no shame in feeling down and feeling low. Pick up the phone, call loved ones, shoot somebody a text. It doesn't all have to be Netflix all the time in order to make yourself feel better. And also, don't feel pressure to change the world. We've been with coronavirus for a month, and it's going to be with us for a very, very long time. Don't feel pressured that you have to be productive. Don't follow those memes that say, if you don't come out of coronavirus with a new business, you failed. You're a human being, and you have to live, and you have to survive, and you have to find a new emotional, psychological, and spiritual normal. Allow your body, allow your heart, and allow your soul to understand the trauma that we're in and live through it, breathe through it, survive through it, and grow through it. And then share that love with other people so they too know what it's like to feel protected and loved, even in a time where a lot of us are feeling down. Thanks so much for spending time with Clickbaity tonight. We will see all of you guys next Tuesday, 8:30 sharp. It's Jason Johnson, Mondale Robinson, and Marcus Farrell signing off.
Trap squad, 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 trap squad.
Good evening, everybody. It's Dr. Jason Johnson along with Mondale Robinson.
What's good, y'all? Mondale Robinson from Black Male Voters Project. Let's get it.
Marcus Farrell.
Marcus Farrell, nice to see you, nice to meet you, nice to get on with you. Hope we have great conversations tonight.
We're here for Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap. We are three guys talking about the important political, cultural, and economic issues of the day. We come to you twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 8:30. Please make sure you invite your friends, family, and your enemies, because we're sure to make some of those as well. So tonight, we have a very, very full show, both of serious and not so serious topics that we're going to get into. And I want to just jump in from the very beginning. Last week, Thursday, we ended the show. I gave a sort of special comment talking about the impact of COVID-19, coronavirus on people's mental, emotional, psychological health. I think that is where we kind of want to start today's show, with new information and new reports, not just how COVID is affecting the economy, not just how COVID has continued to mutate and change how it affects people's lives and who is killing people, but also reports out of Charlottesville and New York this week of prominent doctors taking their lives out of sadness and depression from what they've had to experience on the front lines of battling against the coronavirus pandemic. So we want to start off at the beginning. We'll start with Marcus. Marcus, what do you think is the biggest coronavirus story right now in the country that isn't being talked about enough?
Personally, I think it's the city in Virginia. I keep saying city in Virginia, and I always go brain fart exactly when I say the city. There's a city.
It's Richmond.
Richmond. So our dear Richmond, Virginia, has 100% COVID-19 deaths from Black people, and I think that's one of the biggest stories right now that we could possibly even get close to. And the reason why is because it shows the disparities about race, class, and healthcare in America. So as far as I'm concerned, I think when we think about what's going on right now, there's a city in Virginia, and there's probably a lot more cities like this where there's issues with COVID-19 deaths consistently in problematic ways. And here's the thing about it. In every city there's a Black hospital and a white hospital, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't talk about that much. And how many resources do the Black schools and the Black hospitals and the Black churches get in comparison to the white schools and the white hospitals, right? So you can only imagine what's happening in that city right now and think to yourself, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened because COVID-19 and the coronavirus is not a racist virus in itself, but the American system is racist. We have countries in the planet right now that have literally gotten rid of COVID-19 because of their stay-at-home orders.
Only one, but we'll get to that later.
Hey, and we can talk about that later. But still, America's supposed to be the shining beacon, right? And it's not a beacon for African Americans right now. So we have to kind of keep it real when it comes down to what's happening and what's not happening.
Mondale, what do you think is the biggest coronavirus story right now that you think needs to have more attention paid to it?
Honestly, I think, not to downplay what Marcus just said, because when you talk about 100% of a population of a diverse city, it's damning to the country and also the systems that we have in place. But then I also want to, shine light on the fact that jail and prison populations are being ravaged by this viruses. Much like always, and we're sitting idle and making these folk invisible. There's a prison in Ohio where 70% of the people there were COVID-19 positives. And if we thought testing was scarce out here, imagine what you need to know about the sisters and brothers living in prisons and in jails. You know what I mean? So
right.
That's scary to me. But testing isn't the only shortcoming, because we know they're not getting tested properly. We're warehousing these citizens and then we're not giving them PPE. And on top of that, when some of them are being creative, like trying to use their uniforms, if you can call them that, to make PPE or masks, then they're readily subjected to being further criminalized because they're being charged with destruction of government property. And this is ridiculous, especially when you think about the number of Black and brown folk that are incarcerated or over incarcerated. So couple that with the fact that there's no social distancing in prisons and jails, unless we're talking about locking people down for 23 hours, which is inhumane in itself. But then you have to couple that with the fact that these people don't have the ability, once you lock them down, to speak with their loved ones, to visit their loved ones or have visits from their loved ones, and also, properly bathe and exercise and get fresh air. So, it's the prison population and the jail population that scares me. Then you hear numbers like 70%. That is a damning proclamation for anybody. I'm tragic about that, and it just speaks to the ridiculousness of over incarceration and also how we're not handling COVID-19.
So I think the biggest COVID story right now is what is happening in New Zealand. Now let's put this in context. New Zealand is roughly like the size of Brooklyn, right? It's got like just a few million people. It is a highly touted island, for lack of a better word, off the coast of Australia. But New Zealand is the first country in the world that basically says they have more or less eliminated coronavirus. Now, what does it mean that they've eliminated coronavirus? It means not that no one in New Zealand has coronavirus anymore. It means that they have developed a system that is so efficient in identifying, tracking, and then quarantining individuals who have coronavirus that the disease effectively can no longer spread. If I can immediately find out, if I've tested enough people, if I can identify you as you have it, you have to be in your home, We will have public services there to make sure you don't leave your house for 2 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. A contained disease is one step away from a cured disease. But here's what's interesting. As much as we may want to praise what's happening in New Zealand and the improvements we've seen in South Carolina, South Korea, not South Carolina, those are countries that are significantly smaller than even some American states. But I ask you guys, what can we learn from these countries about how to get a handle on coronavirus? Because again, yes, we're much bigger than South Korea. Yes, we're much bigger than New Zealand, but they got to be doing something right. What's the thing they're doing that we can implement?
I think that should be a conversation in general. We're not listening to our own instructions. America has one of the deepest funded scientific operations in the CDC, and we're not following what they say. We pay billions of dollars a year to make sure that our scientists are funded. We pay billions of dollars a year to make sure that our communications from our government is actually giving out the right instructions. But what have we done? We haven't listened to what folks with common sense have said to us. Instead of listening to science and people who went to Harvard and people who went to all the best universities in America, there's plenty of people who went to Oxford that are at the CDC right now. By the way, Oxford is has they say they have not a cure, but antibody to is Oxford?
It is Oxford, but like no one is close, and I think this is really key. Yeah, no one is close to this. No one is close to anybody.
So we have some of the best minds in the world that are telling us to stay home. And now that I'm realizing that how ignorant that these governors that some of these states have, especially in the South, are, we have to have a realistic conversation about what the motives are behind it. The science is one thing, the motives are another thing. And when it comes down to it, the motives right now are telling us that they want to hurt people to make sure that capitalism and make sure that our economy is going.
But hold on there. And I think this is key. And Monday, I want you to be able to jump in on this as well. We all know what's being done wrong in America, right? We all know that. We all saw the pictures today of, Vice President Mike Pence touring a hospital in Washington, D.C. and being the only person not wearing a mask, right?
After he was told to wear a mask.
He was told to wear a mask. He did not wear a mask. He's the only person there not wearing a mask, endangering himself, endangering the staff. So we already know that the country is run by people who are anti-science. And I would be willing to wager that somebody like Mike Pence did that specifically because he didn't want to offend or annoy or insult or appear to be contradicting President Trump, right? We know that's how these people operate. But what can we learn, right? Because even if we can't trust the federal government, even if we can't trust the president, even if we can't trust how the administration will behave, as I said, we do have some states, California, Illinois, New York, Virginia, well, probably not Virginia, Florida. We do have some states that are close to the size of a New Zealand. What could these state governors then be doing, and what lessons can they be taking from what we've seen in New Zealand and South Korea? I keep saying South Carolina, which is fundamentally different than South Korea, both by food and demographic population. But apparently I'm very hungry tonight.
Jamie Harrison.
So I think
Jamie Harrison.
Right, exactly. That is a big difference. Jamie Harrison is going to be an elected official in South Carolina. That's what you're exactly right, Marcus. I'm thinking of Jamie. Shout out to Team Jamie. Shout out to Team Jamie for getting more endorsements and outraising Lindsey Graham. He will be the next senator from South Carolina. That's why. There you go. That's why I got the Palmetto State on my mind. Thank you.
So I think it's impossible to talk about prevention or defeating Corona without talking about the lack of leadership or the leadership that exists in Jacinda. It is wrong for us to criticize Donald Trump for the failure and the continued growth of Corona at the rate that it's growing in this country without talking about the lack of leadership that he provides. Whereas Jacinda in New Zealand is actually killing it. When New Zealand was posed, or when they were, people started being diagnosed And WHO, the World Health Organization, called this a pandemic. New Zealand responded properly and immediately. We lack that leadership, and that leadership is the only thing that we can point to that is the problem. We don't lack the brain power. Marcus described that very well in this country. The power and the problem with it is, or the problem in general, is that we didn't listen to science. Our leadership didn't tell us how important it was to stay home, and instead we told people to drink Clorox.
Right. I want to add on to that. America is at a point, and we can get to this later on, but at least American Democrats are at a point where some of us are pressuring for a woman leader, a woman vice president. Some of us are pressuring for a Black woman president. One big thing about New Zealand is New Zealand has a woman prime minister, right?
Jacinda. Yeah, her name is Jacinda. Yeah. That's what I was talking about.
And let's talk real for a second, right? Maybe it's time for us to start looking at the successful measures of what countries take and then replicating them here in America instead of taking the atypical, let's do everything to hurt the American people, man. From the PPE, is it the Paycheck Protection Program, all the way down to current coronavirus stimulus when it comes down to the hospitals. The people who need it the most are getting the least, right? And I just want to see good leadership, right? So, Jason, to answer your question, what's amazing about what can we learn is we can learn that there is still viable leadership and there's possibilities in America that can happen right now. That if we take the right decisions from, we can actually build from that. But I just don't think that our current administration is even anywhere close to doing that.
So I want to spin off of this because I think this is key. Both you and Mondale touched upon this. This idea that the kind of leadership that we've gotten in this country, not just the kind of leadership we have now, but the kind of leadership we have in general is problematic. And I've seen plenty of memes and plenty of stories talking about the fact that, like, if you look at countries that have been led by women, Germany, New Zealand, some of these other places tend to be, Gretchen Whitmer within the United States, that many of these places that have women as their lead executives have done as well, if not better, in addressing these kinds of issues than men in leadership has, which begs the sort of question. Do you think, and I know this is going to be controversial, but that's where we're going. Do you think there is something to be said for America's obsession with always having men in executive positions that makes us less likely or less capable of dealing with these sorts of larger societal problems like a pandemic? Do you think, and I want to be careful when I say this, I'm not making an essentialist argument about men or women, but I am saying that we seem to keep picking the same kinds of leaders over and over again. And these countries that have had more diversity in the leadership that they've selected sometimes seem to be tackling these problems better. Or am I just being crazy? What do you guys think?
No, I don't think you're being crazy. Here's what I would say. I'm a data nut. I'm fascinated by facts. Unfortunately, this country isn't, as proven
not
by
right now, anyway.
President and administration. Absolutely. Well, not just now. I mean, we have plenty of documented history where this country said Black people are less than just because of the melanin in our skin. So we have a history of being dumb as Americans. But what I will say, though, is, history is a great teacher for me because of the facts that exist. And we know that when you educate a woman, you educate an entire community. When you educate a man, you educate a person. So with that thinking, I'm thinking if this is true, and I think it is because data says so and history says so, then yeah, I think a woman as leader of the free world, or the largest country in the free world, I think there is some truth to that. There may be some benefit to putting that person as an executive. Like you said, we've seen that time and time again. Countries or states that have women as leaders, especially as executives, those states are profiting more. Those folks have better quality of lives, and they live longer lives and healthier lives. So yeah, I agree.
I can only say this right here. I watched Miss America last night on Hulu.
I don't have Hulu because you won't share your password with me.
Whoa! And the fans are watching.
Just throwing it out there.
I'll tell you right now that I'm going to ever do that. But what I'm going to say to you is this right here. The portrayal of the women who were on there last night And it lets me know that like we need a Shirley Chisholm type figure, right? Especially right now, right? Someone who is progressive, who fought against establishment Democrats. And one of the most amazing things about last night, and I'm not trying to bring that show up, but in different ways, but I do suggest everybody watch it, because it was one of the first times I saw mainstream media portray a Black woman talking about progressive issues and actually saying establishment Democrats at the same time, right? And if you watch that Hulu special, what you'll see is that common sense solutions were what Shirley was running on, right? And yes, it might be hypothetical. A hypothetical conversation. But at the end of the day, what we need is real leaders right now, man. What we need is people who can actually step up to the plate. And when we think about the coronavirus right now, I think there's two thought processes across America. There's a corporatist, capitalist process, and there is a people first process. And at the end of the day, you got to be on one side or the other. I think a lot more people were on the capitalist process when they gave Americans $1,200 that didn't even get the bank accounts. Right? Didn't even get the bank accounts. They gave us minimum wage for a month. Think about what your government is saying to you. Forget you guys. You guys get minimum wage for a month, and you guys are going to get over the coronavirus. When we know in actuality, when you sit back at home and you look at your family members and your friends and your homies and everybody else, that's going to take a lot more money if you lost your job right now to actually be a viable citizen in this community going forward. They're going to have to give out at least 3 more stimulus packages for America to even be at flattening.
Now here's the thing, and I think this is key going forward. We all know what the larger economic issues are, and how they're going to continue to metastasize. It's 26 million unemployed now. It's going to hit 30. We're going to have massive unemployment. And again, what's key?
Hey, so let's not blow past that point. 26 million job loss puts us back at where we were before or during the Great Recession. So I think it's important to put that in context. But
that's what I was about to say. Even when you get into numbers, you get 26, 27, 30 million people unemployed. We have to also recognize what a larger drag that is on so many other people, because jobs are not a one-on-one relationship to a community. One job often supports 2 or 3 different people, or is a critical part of a household of 5 or 6 people who are now forced to shelter in place together. So we can't just say, oh, this person applied for unemployment. 26, it's not 26 individuals who have applied for unemployment. They represent the financial stability of probably 3 times that many people.
That's right.
Because there's a whole lot of families out there that are only supported by one job. I'll give you guys a quick example. Just talking to my class this evening, one of my students talked about the fact that her father just lost his job. And so they have no essential employees in their home right now. And another one of my students said, you know what, working for, Instacart or Shopcart or whatever, where it shops other people, she found out that actually working there online might be cheaper than the office job that she has at a doctor's office. So again, we're seeing sort of a disturbing disruption of what people can do financially and otherwise. But I want to take this and flip this to our next topic. So of course, the economic issue and the massive unemployment is going to have changes in how people view their leaders. And one of the things I want to talk about now is the new push. Look, it's been going on for a long time, but the new push to make sure that people can engage in male-only or primarily male-only voting. Where are we at right now with that? How realistic, Marcus, do you think it is that we'll have, out of our 50 states, 36 or 37 that allow people to just get their votes by mail? Do you think that's likely by Labor Day? Do you think that's where we're pushing, or do you still see resistance in state levels?
I'm pushing for your Black Panther jersey that you got on underneath your coat.
It's a flex. It's a flex.
Hey, he's trying to get away with this whole show without nobody calling him. We see you, bro.
Marcus, by the way, and I'm going to point this out when we talk about this topic later on. So last time I was wearing this, you remember it just popped up on Facebook. This time last year, when we all saw us, That's why I flexed in Jersey. I just got to Jersey. It was the same week, like Us came out the same week as Avengers Endgame. So just popped up before
So I listen, we need to have a whole other show on Wakanda and my problems with that entire movie, but I digress.
Don't be that guy.
I am that guy. I am that guy.
In the background. I'm a comic book guy. I will fight you on this, Mondale. I will fight you. We're gonna get to this at the end of the show.
Not this show, but I relish being the referee. So I relish being
Marcus,
the referee.
can I say one thing real quick before you relish?
Yes.
I got a question I'm gonna ask myself and answer. Is Wakanda good for Black Americans? Okay.
Oh, good gracious. It's a movie.
Hey, that sounds like me, Mondale.
A movie. Okay, look, I'm going to say this because we real and organic. Ding, 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 like Apollo Creed. Please, Mondale, tell me in my Wakanda shirt with my Wakanda background, what is wrong with a science fiction movie, part of a superhero movie? How on earth is that possibly bad for Black America?
So let me start by saying it was beautiful to see all of those Black people of all of those different shades on the
You're not gonna butter me up.
Let me stop right there, though. Let me stop right there. Because if anybody took the time to watch that movie, there were several problems that were extremely detrimental to what it means to be a Black person in America. And I'll start with the most obvious ones, just in case the lovers of comic books missed it. First, Killmonger, what a horrible name for a character, hold on one second. Killmonger was the only prominent African-American in that movie. He was not strategic. He only cared about violence. His mother wasn't present in his life, which is not real for 99.9% of Black people. On top of that, they showed him as a Black American man incapable of love, because the only woman that loved him, he shot her in the head. Secondly, Wakanda chose to be saved by a white CIA agent, and we know the harm that CIA agent has done to Black Americans. So what I saw in that movie was the incapability of loving from Black men and no Black women to support their children. That movie was detrimental to me and how I feel as a Black American.
So Mondale, there you go. So Jason Johnson,
there you go.
Yes.
Take my opportunity to be the moderator in this piece right here. Me. So Jason,
yes.
When it comes down to motherless child in Marvel comics, when it comes down to getting saved, being Captain Save Country by the white CIA, what is your thought process when it comes down to the Marvel cinematic movie?
So first and foremost, the name Eric Killmonger goes back to Don McGregor, who helped develop that character in 1971. Don McGregor was one of the most conscious brothers who ever got to write a comic. He came up with a name just like you have Dr. Doom or anything else like that. They're silly superhero names. It has no larger meaning. Eric Killmonger was a man who was actually dedicated to his own form of nationalism. So that's the first thing. It is a superhero movie. I do not understand colored people, and I say this with affection when I say colored.
I'm next, Marcus.
I do not understand people who seem to believe that a movie that was created by a larger capitalist corporate structure is somehow going to have some deep, powerful meaning. It is a superhero movie. It is not going to be some sort of underlying subversive revolutionary trope. And anyone who watches that movie and thinks that that's going to happen has an absolutely misguided understanding as to what superhero movies do or what these cartoons in general do. So that's the first thing. The second thing about Killmonger, oh my God, he's incapable of love. He's a villain. Villains don't like people. They kill people. The notion that this is some deeper treatise about African-American men is absolutely preposterous. He was a bad guy who had a bad idea. And I'll anticipate the next one. Well, his idea of revolution. attack on revolutionaries? No, it wasn't an attack on being a revolutionary. He was a villain, just like Dr. Doom, just like Thanos, just like anybody else. What was going on with Wakanda is you had a theocratic monarchy that was isolationist, and they didn't care about anybody else on the planet. The philosophical argument the whole time was not just between Eric Killmonger and T'Challa, it was also Nakia who had the idea of a strategic engagement with the world, and she's the one who eventually won the argument at the end. And let us also be clear, they weren't saved by a white CIA agent. The only reason they brought that guy in is because he saved the woman that the king was sweating. And if you remember, all throughout the film, they kept forgetting that he was there. And
Pause for a second. First, shout out to Mondale for using a Black Panther line in his rebuttal to you. Are we done? Are we there yet? Before we go forward, I want America to know that if you see behind Jason Johnson, here is one of the illest collections of Black Funko Pop stars. Like he has a really dope collection. Like he got me addicted. I got my little Ice Cube and my little thing right there. But Mondale,
Black action figures dating back to the 50s.
So Mondale, because obviously I want to move this conversation forward, but obviously we got into a little bit of superhero day, which we're going to touch on later on. Do you have a response to Jason Johnson's comic book hotepery?
Yes, so I'm glad you call it hotepery because that's exactly where I was going with it. He just did this whole thing about how Hollywood is disconnected from the world and there's no messaging in fake movies.
That is not what I said. That is not what I said. I said the expectation.
And now he's hotepping over me. Somebody get Dr. Umar Johnson, please.
No, I just
Somebody get Dr. Umar.
Crazy. Why would you expect?
I don't expect. I expect Hollywood to do just what it did. That's my problem with it. I don't expect anything different. We see when Black people are put in superhero movies or any sci-fi movies that are normally or traditionally white characters, white America loses its mind. So don't tell me there's no long-term or there's no effects to having Black people, especially Black Americans, where we are the largest diaspora of Black people outside of the continent. That's a fact. So to say that there's no space for a Black mother in a movie that represents us or supposedly represents us, and then for you to say that T'Challa's sister had actually won the argument and all they did was put nonprofit organizations up in America.
I didn't say it was T'Challa's. I said it was Nakia. That was not his sister. That was not his sister. And the other thing is, Peter Parker doesn't have a mother.
Nonprofit outposts.
Captain America ain't got a mother. Most superheroes don't have mothers.
And we know the problem with nonprofits and Black people in America. So what I'm gonna say is there's always consequences to movies, even if they are sci-fi or superhero. Right. And to believe that there are no long-term effects to them, or that people are not offended or feel a certain type of way about them, or they don't sway people to believe certain things is wrong. And to say that the white CIA agent didn't kill the last jet trying to escape Wakanda that's not what I argued.
All right, pause.
Marcus, I have to say this. Mondale.
I'm going to end this conversation for now by asking one question, and one question that's very important. Mondale Robinson, did you enjoy Black Panther?
I watched it 8 times at the movie theater.
Jason Johnson, did you enjoy Black Panther?
Mondale, do you cut your wrist when you punch strawman like that? Because that was, that was three-quarters of what you argue ain't even stuff that I said. Like you just beating the hell out of it.
So listen, it's exactly what you said. You try to defend Killmonger's character. You try to defend Killmonger.
I made the argument about Nakia.
Listen, Marcus, he tried to defend Killmonger's character.
I asked one question.
Marcus, he tried to defend Killmonger's character by naming the person who named him. That's like saying.
I asked one question. You answered the question.
So that's like saying. Hold on a second, Marcus. Hold on a second.
You got angry at his name, and I told you
what we're gonna do.
I'm just telling you the origin of his name means nothing. I was talking about his character. His name is it's like blaming Jeffrey Dahmer's mother for him being a serial killer. No, his name has nothing to do with it.
Jeffrey Dahmer
Killmonger killed so many people who had notches all over his body for every person he killed. Don't say it's not related to Jeffrey Dahmer. You try to say the person who named him had a space in the way that he showed up in a Hollywood big film. It did not. And what the comic book portrayed or who he was to the person who created him, that person missed the mark. If that person would have known.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Alan just fired me from being a moderator from now on. So
Thank you. Sorry. So I'm back. I'm gonna moderate the rest. Next topic.
Go ahead.
Next topic. As I was saying. So we gonna talk about mail-in voting. Marcus, secure the vote. Let's talk mail-in voting. That's mail-in voting.
Oh, I can talk now?
Yes, you can talk now. I had to make sure that Mondale was not slandering. We're gonna go back. Let's talk mail-in voting.
So there's not even a conspiracy theory hat on anymore when it comes down to Black people when it comes down to access to the ballots right now. My dear sister, mother of all voting rights, Stacey Abrams, just put out a beautiful conversation, an op piece about voting by mail in America, right? And just general access to votes. Here in Georgia, her home state, a couple of weeks ago, I just got this right here, and I want to make sure everybody sees that. It's secure to vote. That's my vote by mail ballot. So I'm gonna flash it real quick because it has a lot of my information.
Illegal.
But here's the thing.
Is that illegal?
Well, we need to find out. And the problem is, even a very astute politico like myself who understands voting rights, maybe this is not illegal. Maybe this is not legal, because if you think about what happened in 2018 in the state of Georgia, when it comes down to fair rights to the voting ballot, there's a couple of documentaries that are out right now about how Black folks and about how people in the state of Georgia would actually send in a ballot that got sent to them, and the ballot was the wrong size.
Wow.
You have to properly filled out. It was the wrong size when you sent it back in, and it even had a governmental postage stamp. We are at a bad place, right? Yes, we are at a bad place right now when it comes down to voting by mail. And here's the thing. They want to open up America and open up stores, but they also want to close down voting by mail. At the same time, Black people, Latino people, people of color, poor people, working class folks, I want y'all to understand exactly what's going on right now. There's a war against us to express democracy, right? And as far as I'm concerned, I'm down to fight it. So I have my vote. I have my mail ballot right here, right? And I plan on doing everything I possibly can to make sure that my little vote is counted. And I would like for you to do the same thing.
So, Mondale, I want to ask this because you specifically target getting and activating sort of Black men to vote. One of the things that has concerned me when I think about the sort of push for mail-in voting, and again, obviously it's good, it's practical, it makes sense, it's a public health issue, but I think of how transient so many people in the Black community, especially Black men, may be in general, but especially under coronavirus. You have people who are like, I had to leave my apartment. I moved back in with my mother, or I moved in with some friends, or I'm living with my sister, or something else like that. People aren't even in the locations that they thought they would be, and they don't know where they're going to be living, whether that's a couch or a house or a loft or a bed or a street corner. They don't even know where they're going to be living come October or November. So how do we go about organizing people to get ballots when they're not sure and they're home insecure for conceivably the next 5 to 6 months?
So home insecurity is a big part of vote by mail that stresses me out, simply because you don't have an address or a home does not mean you don't have the right to vote, right? Like it allows space for people that are not that doesn't have a home to vote. So how do these people get ballots, right? So I mean, like, we're already excluding an entire percentage of our population from voting when we do that. The idea of vote by mail that's happening right now is a direct result of COVID-19. And overall, I believe it's a progressive state to where we should be, or stance to where we should be moving anyway. And I support that. However, it does come with drawbacks. We know that this president has already begun his campaign to weakening the trust in vote by mail system, even though he voted by mail.
Right, attacking the post office.
Right. He constantly gets on TV and Twitter and rants against, vote by mail and like how all of these problems that exist or could exist in vote by mail, when in actuality, our only documented history in real space or real time that speaks to voter fraud using the vote by mail system is a white Republican in North Carolina, in the eastern part of North Carolina, in the last election cycle, who tried it. He didn't try, he actually did.
He did.
Go to black houses, older black voters, and steal their ballots and put his name in as their candidate, right? So, I mean, like, so he's making it like it's a Democratic problem, when in actuality, it's his Republican counterparts that are actually, you know, responsible for this. Furthermore, there are other problems that exist, like the poll tax, for instance, in Georgia. Marcus mentioned Georgia. The poll tax I'm talking about is like requiring people to have stamps. Not only is it a poll tax because people don't have extra money to buy stamps, but also because
I might not have a stamp.
Yeah,
I
not
might
only
not
that,
have a stamp.
Yeah.
not
Who's
only
got
that,
stamps?
but you're also
I'm-
endangering.
yeah.
Well, you're also endangering people's lives when you require them to leave their home to go to the post office and try to interact with other folks. So I mean, like, there's so much to do with it, and also people don't really, in our community. Let's be honest, in our community, there's some skepticism that exists around voting by mail, right?
Right.
And that's not an unfounded or unbirthed skepticism, because we know historically we have so many apparatuses and systems, Democratic and Republican, that try to steal our vote or try to suppress our vote. So when you're telling us to send a ballot in, we are less likely to be, have faith in that system, simply because when we vote at the polls, they steal our vote. So let alone sending in something by mail. But I think it's incumbent upon us to play politics, that we are spending necessary resources on educating our communities on the real as it pertains to voting by mail, and also ensuring that we have, what you said, Jason, accurate addresses, ensuring that we are active on voting rolls, so that we're not counting come November or whenever our primaries happen in our states. It's also an important thing to check in. We see right now in Georgia what's happening. If you look at what's happening in Georgia and those ballots that have been returned, we see states where Black people are the majority population, or counties where Black people are the majority. These counties are being slow to count these ballots, and that scares me in itself. So I'm a little nervous, and it also is going to require us as politicians or politicos and people that play politics to be more vigilant on how we are checking up on our communities and ensuring our votes are being counted.
Now, I want to point this out. And literally, when you were just mentioning this, Mondale, I'm in my office. You're in your office. You know, Marcus is sort of in the living room of his house near the TV. I literally was like looking around my desk, and I was like, do I actually have stamps? Like, I found I have some 1 cent stamps, but you know, if you send a bunch of sixth graders to my house on a scavenger hunt looking for stamps, I'd probably be hard pressed to have them. It's not something that we generally use anymore. So the idea that people are going to have the 39, 49 cent stamps, they're going to have enough of them, they're going to remember. Look, I remember back in my poverty days in graduate school, that the time between having a bill, writing a check, putting in the envelope, and going to get a stamp, oftentimes I would end up turning something in late because I never had all three pieces at the same time, right? Like, that's not a normal organic thing for people to do anymore. It's not your mother, your father, your grandmother sitting there with the little sponge, you know, putting it on the back of the stamps and putting them on at least that's how my parents used to pay bills. I don't know how y'all used to do it. They used to have a little sponge they would use. But I say this because all of this is contingent upon, and we got a special bonus topic I'm gonna hit both these brothers with, and I want you to understand this as an audience. It's not just that me and Marcus and Mondale are friends, but we actually do discuss what we're gonna talk about before the show. We have a little pre-production meeting. And
arguments. No, tell the truth. Arguments.
And sometimes different topics and ideas come in, and this voting thing, as important as it is, I think it can't be separated from the idea of who we're voting for. And there's an issue that has popped up over the last 24 to 48 hours that I really wanted to make sure that I hit these brothers with tonight, that neither one of them are expecting, and you all can take this out on me later if you want to, but I think it's of importance. We care about voting primarily right now because it's an exercise of our rights as citizens, as African Americans, but also because we are all absolutely dedicated to making sure that Donald Trump does not stay in office. That is something that we can all agree upon. He is an existential threat to Black people specifically, to the United States and the world as a whole. That also means at a practical level, voting for the only person who can beat him, which is the major party nominee, which is Joe Biden. And there have been stories that have come out about Joe Biden in the last 24 to 48 hours that I think are worthy of discussion by people who are engaged in politics. This is touchy subject matter, both from a journalistic perspective and a politics perspective, but I think it's important and I think it's worth addressing. So I want to sort of set this up before I ask both Mondale and Marcus this question. There are accusations from a woman named Tara Reid that Joe Biden assaulted her about 25 years ago. Now, I think it's important that when we talk about these sorts of issues that we make it clear these are accusations. There are no legal reports back then. There's no witnesses. There's no documentation that this occurred. But what you do have now, what's happened in the last 24 hours, is what we like to call contemporaneous reports. And what that means from a journalism standpoint is if you have an accusation against somebody, especially in the context of sexual assault, look, not everybody files a report. Not everybody can go to the cops. Maybe they were frightened. Maybe they were intimidated. Maybe they were traumatized. So what we do try to look at before we just go with anyone's accusations is, did you tell anyone at the time? Did you tell anyone at the time this thing occurred? And what has happened in the last 24 to 48 hours is there is now another woman who has come forward who has said, yes, Tara Reid told me that she was assaulted by Joe Biden when we were next door neighbors living together and living next to each other in the mid-90s. I want to say this because I want to make sure we're not getting into this argument about credibility. I want to say this to both of these men here, and I want to ask them, do you think that this news story warrants a reconsideration of Joe Biden as the nominee? Do you think that this story right now warrants increased scrutiny by the press? Or do you think this is simply something that we're at the beginning stages of, and consequently no judgments or assessments should be made until we know more about the story?
If Marcus Farrell was the candidate for president, as a hot mess that he is right now, then there would be automatic reconsideration for exactly what happened, no matter what. I can't get away with that as a black man. I'm sorry.
No, you cannot.
Right? I can't get away with it. So to me, there's a couple of things. There's actually only three things that could possibly happen. There's either hypocrisy. There's either a hypocrisy, strong hypocrisy. There's either a setup where Joe Biden is getting set up, or it's both, right? But at the end of the day, there's a truth to that. And I do find it amazing how many, and I've seen friends of mine made the decision that no matter what happens, because the Democrat is going into the primary, that this woman has to be trying to set the Democrat.
It has to be a scam. That it has to be a setup, right?
And I've also seen from a lot of my progressive friends, not a lot of my like sort of conservative, moderate friends, that it's the exact opposite. So it can only be one answer, but there is an answer, and that woman deserves an answer. And America, especially Democratic voters, deserve an answer. You can't sweep allegations like that under the rug and expect America to be cool with it. And at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that I want to make sure of is that, number one, Trump gets out of the office, and we got a lot of time to do that, right? So what's our next options? Well, our next options is to literally look at what happened and maybe try to find, if it did happen, try to find somebody viable who can pick up the votes. If it didn't happen, try not to. But also, at the end of the day, there's a black woman. Hopefully, there's a black woman that can. And I don't want this, but there should be a black woman that's Joe Biden's vice president to clean this up. Because at this point, black women clean up everything, right? And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what happened, and it should matter what happened, but it doesn't matter what happened because it seems like the Democrats have put their flag in the proverbial ground, right? So how do we make sure that we get the voters that would be turned off? Well, it looks like it's gonna have to be a black woman to save the day again.
Okay, that is one perspective. Mondale, what do you think?
I listen. I have 7 sisters and a plethora, about 23 nieces and 11 aunts, plus. I could keep going with all the women, not the, and my mother, of course, to mention all of the black women and women in general in my life that means something, and a buttload of women that means something to me. So I definitely defer to the fact that we need to have this conversation and not just internally. It needs to be an external conversation, and it needs to happen.
Yes.
Here's what I do say though. I think for me it's light will be wonderful on the situation, having this conversation, because not only does it criticize Joe Biden, it also criticizes the other accused sexual assault or rapist in the election, which is Donald Trump. So you can't talk about Joe Biden's problems without talking about Donald Trump's. And I think whatever is just and whatever is true in this situation needs to be found out, and it needs to be found out sooner than later. And I don't want to pretend that it's not important enough. Presidential election is more important than a woman's dignity and also her receiving justice for what happened to her. So for me, this conversation has to happen, and no one can shut it down.
So I'm glad you guys both said that, because I hit this from a couple angles. One, I want to address something that I said, because it's funny. There's a clip of me from the Joy Reid show last fall when there were accusations against Brett Kavanaugh. Remember the second set of accusations against Kavanaugh? And it's a clip that Tucker Carlson has been playing and replaying on Fox. And I know he's replaying it because my mentions on my timeline and my Facebook page pop up with all these crazy right-wingers calling me names. And what I said, and it's a universal application, and I started saying this with Kobe Bryant 10, 12 years ago, and it's also sort of applicable to Brett Kavanaugh, Joe Biden, everything else like that. When the Brett Kavanaugh story came out, I said, I have never heard of a one-time rapist. I've never heard of a one-time sexual assaulter. If you are the kind of person that engages in that behavior, you don't magically stop because you had an epiphany. Usually people who engage in that behavior keep doing it. And they do it because they have not been held accountable or they have not faced any consequences for that behavior. Now, that's my own assessment. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a criminal investigator. Nor is that meant to suggest at any level that someone's accusation only matters if 5 other people made it, right? But for example, when you look at Bill Cosby, right? I remember thinking to myself, look, at some point when you have 20 people accusing you and their stories are from disparate times and locations and they all have a certain thread of similarity, it suggests to me that even if we don't have any physical evidence, you probably did it. So applying this to Joe Biden, I agree with both of you, where to me, look, I think this story needs to be investigated. But I think we need to understand this as well. And whether this is Joe Biden or who was the senator from Minnesota? What was it, the gentleman?
Al Franken.
Yeah, whether it's Al Franken, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Justin Fairfax, or anything else like that. I think we also, as journalists and people who engage in public discourse, need to always make a distinction between what is an allegation and what is a proven fact. And words like rape and sexual assault and sexual harassment, I think, are irresponsibly used interchangeably. And those things are different. I think words like accusations and evidence or credible accusation are used interchangeably. And I think that's irresponsible. I think that it would be beneficial for the purposes of public discourse for us to establish, what do we call a credible accusation? I mean, for example, this woman, Tara Reid, between the Larry King.
Jason, I have to say something to you, brother.
Mm-hmm.
we have taken less evidence from what Tara Reid has presented and turned it into a very big thing that canceled people's lives.
Yes.
But since Joe Biden is running for president, the same voices are quiet. I said it. Marcus for America said it.
Marcus said that. It was not me.
No, but I'm not lying. We have taken some quiet as kept by humbug accusations and canceled people's lives over more credible evidence that Tara Reid has had. And here's the thing. I'm still not saying Tara Reid was right because I don't know.
Right.
But
none of us do.
But pause. But what I will say to you is that woman deserves the utmost scrutiny about her situation that everybody else did. And it's problematic to me when we pick and choose which woman we're going to believe, which black man we're going to believe when the white woman says he might have looked at me funny. Like which situation we're going to believe? Because America, we are driven by populace and thought process and what's cool right now instead of what's factual. Right. As soon as we get back to being what's factual, to me personally, that's when we win. But right now we're losing because we're going to pick and choose who we like and who we don't like. And guess what? Even our favorites neoliberals, even our favorites progressives have problems.
I'll say it again. I said it and I'll say it again. I don't care which party you are. I don't care how old you are or what office you're running for. If there's credible claims, and I hate the word credible because it implies that somebody's not credible and they may have been harmed, and that is so dangerous. What I'm saying is, if there's claims, investigate it, and once the investigations is public and made true, without shaming the accuser, then we have to react to it, because if not, we become hypocrites, the same hypocrites we criticize. We can't criticize Donald Trump and call him a rapist and a sexual assaulter and he's had, the same
25 people come forward. Yes.
25 or one, right? Because Joe Biden is at this point in the same situation. Now this person has been confirmed by her neighbor. Her neighbor said that she told her about this. Hold on a second, Marcus. Her neighbor told her about this a while ago. This is not new for this person. That means we have to have this conversation in a real way. And it just can't be because, well, Joe Biden is a Democratic nominee, so this is a plot to take him down. No, this is a person, and we need to hear this.
Margins.
Mondale, I wanted to say one thing that's very important. Back to picking and choosing what's important or not. Our country has decided that, we have zones in America about who's credible and who's not. If you talk about slavery, right, you could easily say, a white guy could rape a white woman and blame that on a slave, and that slave will die and everything's handled. Right? You can do that all the way through Reconstruction. Matter of fact, all the way through the Civil Rights Movement, right? And so there is problematic places that American history has ignored blatantly. Right. But here's the problem with that. Here's the major problem with that. We don't give everybody their just due when it comes down to it. So I will be honest, there have been people who have accused folks for rape and have been proven wrong. But there has been a lot more people who have accused folks for rape who literally didn't even get their books turned over. Right? And that's problematic in itself. And that has to stop.
And I think a key thing, because we're all in agreement here that people who make accusations need to be heard. I don't think anyone's arguing against that. I think what I think is critical, and your both of your thoughts on this are key, is I think that developing a set of standards for those of us who are in public discourse, for those of us who are in media and journalism, I think that's what's important, because what that does is that mitigates against some of the inherent biases that we're talking about, right? Because as of right now, unfortunately, many of these discussions boil down to, who do we think sounds credible? I don't know who credible is. That is driven by whatever kind of biases in society that I'm functioning on. That's driven by who's got a better PR team.
No, Jason, this will be the first and the only time I do this, maybe a lot more. That's driven by mainstream media. Let's be real honest. Because to be quite honest with you, if someone that we collectively had a problem with raped somebody, then trust me, that would be the top line on every single thing that you see from all these networks, right? And I'm not knocking the networks, but they know for a fact that these allegations are out there, and they're credible allegations. They've used less in the past. So what I'm saying to you is,
but here's the pushback, Marta. Here's the pushback. Our definition of credible, because we're not talking about situations where there has been a criminal investigation. So credibility is going to be in the eye of the beholder, the reader, the producer, or the anchor. And if credibility is not being established by some sort of university or even somewhat agreed upon standard, that's where it becomes dangerous. That's why I was mentioning before the idea that many journalists, and I think this is a good idea, many journalists over the last several years, and this became more ensconced during Me Too, but it was happening beforehand of like, okay, look, we know that there are a lot more people who have sexually harassed and sexually assaulted people who didn't ever get reported, right? Because they use power and intimidation to have gotten away with what they did. So how do we report on this accusation? Well, one, we ask the individual, can you share your story? You ask the story several different times. You ask, do you have anybody that can corroborate the story? And then you ask again, which is key, do you have a contemporaneous person who can corroborate it? Because it's one thing to tell a story 25 years later, but if you tell the story at the time and someone can say, yo, I remember that week in 1994 and such came to my room or my dorm or called me on the phone and told me about this, those things end up mattering. But we still can't call that evidence because evidence has a legal connotation to it. And that's why I'm saying is the struggle in all of this, because I think as a society, we are in this battle to make sure that women who have been consistently subjected to abuse and harassment and patriarchy under rape culture, we want to make sure their voices are heard. But we also want to make sure that we set up a system whereby those voices can be heard in a way that is fair and equitable and can.
I gotta be honest with you, man. As a black man, this is the first time that I've seen so much acceptance about hearing out the the accuser's story. I've never seen, and I'm being 1,000% right now.
But I mean, I don't make sure I understand what you're saying. Say it clear,
so let me repeat that.
Okay.
First off, there are so many situations in America right now where women are getting.
Your words counting.
Yes. Back and forth, women are getting hurt. And to be honest with you, and I look at the history of America. Now I'm talking about the history of America.
Right.
This is the first time that I saw an accuser at this point, besides the 90s, with the same guy and so many other folks, right? Actually get like publicly get out of Anita Hill. Like this is the Anita Hilling of a woman right now, right? And typically, yes, it is, man. I don't
understand what you mean by Anita Hilling. I'm not disagreeing.
What I'm saying is we're giving somebody a pass because of who they are and where they are right now.
And you not say somebody and be explicit.
I don't have that luxury, bruh. And I'm not
saying getting a pass. I don't understand.
Who's the who? You said the somebody. Who's the somebody that's getting a pass?
Who's the someone who's getting a pass?
Oh, right now Joe's getting a pass.
Okay. That's what we're not understanding. Yeah.
At that point, we're on the same page because I was just making sure because you were saying right now women are being heard more than ever, but then you had Anita Hill who was not heard. So I mean, I was lost.
No. I want to make this very clear. If in a fair America, all stories
that doesn't exist.
Is that a Pharrell America or is that a fair America?
That doesn't exist.
I thought that was very good. Thank you.
I like that. And that was a good double entendre.
Thank you.
Here's what I would say. and Marcus speaks for himself, so I don't want to say I'm clarifying or saying what Marcus said. I'm saying that I agree in the fact that I feel like women are listened to more in an era of Me Too. I still think it's a shortcoming. Like I just feel like I feel like I'm a part of some wonderful conversations, and let me be clear, and I'm probably gonna get cursed out in our chat and also in my private message, but I'm ready for it. I'm not saying that all women are 100% accurate. I am saying overwhelmingly, nobody's gonna say they were raped because of the stigma associated with that. Or I would say most people won't say they were raped if there's no truth to it. Like I'm not saying that, right? Because it's so much societal like down looking and also like questioning of this person's personhood that it's crazy to believe that somebody would subject themselves to that without associating themselves to some type of truth. So what I would say is one of our listeners just said, that most men, even men that she know and love, have made women uncomfortable with something they've said or done, and this is just society and a society problem. I pray for and hope for a society where there's that is not just society, that people. Right. But I also, what I said to her, and she clarified for me, is that, I said, making someone uncomfortable with what you said is not sexual assault, right? Like, right. So, but she clarified it and said, currently in pop culture, not just like music, but I'm talking about how we talk about stuff on a regular basis, we use those interchangeably, and she's absolutely right on that.
And that's what I was saying before, that I said a couple minutes ago, one of the big concerns that I have from a professional and a public discourse standpoint is sexual harassment, sexual abuse, sexual assault are used interchangeably. They should not be. Accusations, allegations, evidence, and credibility are used interchangeably. They should not be. These are all very different things.
Jason, I have to say,
interchangeably, it doesn't help the accusers or the accused. Yes.
Jason, I have to say one thing, and then we move on. I'll be very public about this. As an African-American man, as a Black man in America, this is one of the most uncomfortable conversations that I've ever had in my life. Not because I'm a rapist, not because I don't believe women. The reason why is because Black men are literally, have been historically accused of things, whether they did it or they didn't do it, and automatically sentenced, automatically lost their careers. Mm-hmm. And this is something that folks don't want to talk about. Right. So I'll say it, right? America looks at, when you think about, like, when Hillary Clinton said, I get scared when I see a Black guy with a hoodie on. Yes, she said that, right? When it gets said that, and don't get me wrong, man, a lot of Black dudes have done wrong. Men do wrong, and they should.
Everybody do wrong. Keep going.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I want to say. Black men are dads. Black men are fathers, man. Like, so when I think about what we're talking about right now, I think a lot more good than bad. And that's just on me. And you don't have to agree with me, but that's how I feel.
So a perfect spin from that. You say, look, Black men are dads, they're brothers, they're uncles, they're stepdads, they're mentors, they're doctors and police officers and school teachers, and sometimes just the dude that gives you some advice when you need it in your life.
And sometimes they're R. Kelly and Bill Cosby too.
Exactly. Sometimes they're R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. I think, though, it speaks to something, and this goes with sort of our closing topic also, or at least closing topic for me, because I want to make sure we get to the last issue, of today being Superhero Day. And it's interesting because I find it problematic when African-American men who are doing what we have always done have to be mythologized and lionized as heroes, because it implies that this ain't what, and you know the word I want to use, but it implies that this ain't what brothers doing, a lot of them doing anyway, right? And it's interesting because, the three of us, I don't know everybody's situation specifically, but the three of us were all raised by some older Black dude, whether it was our biological father, a stepdad, an uncle, a coach, or something. We all had older Black men in our lives that helped give us advice and guidance, right? We've all had older Black men in various positions in our lives who were there. And for us, giving that kind of love and support and mentoring isn't something new and special. And yet we see this sort of tendency. It's like, this is the hero Black father, blah, 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 blah. Because when you make people into superheroes, right, you imply that they're somehow different and special than the ordinary man. And that's not true. And I'll say this, and then I'm going to ask you guys sort of what you think of who's a real hero to you. So over the course of the weekend and heading into this morning, because I've been upset and coronavirus bothers me, I was finishing up Ozark. Strong suggestion. You want to watch an interesting show? Ozark's a great show. So watching and you know, the main plot of the show is about this family that gets involved in money laundering. But what I find interesting is it's a show about these white middle-class people that get involved with money laundering with a drug cartel, the whole family, and seeing these upper middle-class educated white people go through this existential angst. Oh my God, I got a beautiful house, an attractive wife, educated children, a nice neighborhood. I'm so unhappy. I need something new. And it makes me laugh because a 50-year-old Black man who's got a beautiful wife and functional kids and a house and a mortgage is like, I won this ish. We don't have shows like that because for us, you won the game. We are heroes in our own existence. So I pose this to both of you guys on Superhero Day. Tell me a hero that you know of. Tell me just an actual hero, not a Black man who's doing or a Black woman who's doing the things that we all know we've always done. But tell me the story of somebody who you think is an actual hero because they did something that was above and beyond what could be known or considered reasonable.
This might be cheesy, but my superhero is a woman by the name of Rosetta Bobo.
Okay.
She's my mama. And my mom managed to raise me under the most absurd circumstances and have a half decent problem. No, trust me. Most of the people who are my friends on Facebook know that I'm problematic. And Jason and Mondale definitely know that I'm a problematic human being. A little bit. But my mom is the top superhero to me. And Mom, I love you, but actually, if you didn't even watch this, I know you're watching, but if you didn't even watch this, being a single woman raising a kid in the late 1980s, early 1990s, is probably one of the, we talking about boys in the hood time. We talk about everybody want to get hardcore. Now, so my mom is number one, and I do want to give a quick number two, 2/2. Black Lightning, because Black Lightning portrays on Netflix a good Black dad. It is what it is. And I see your face. Stop that. And also classical, very classical hero is Storm. Storm is that bomb diggy. I want to see a picture of Storm. Hey, if you're watching this and you see a picture of Storm with an afro, send me a picture of Storm flying in the air with her natural hair out. It's the most powerful thing in the planet. That's who my three heroes are.
Mondale, hit me with some heroes while I try and find a Storm.
I'm glad you said some heroes because I don't have one. I have a list of heroes that are like real life Black people that them being heroes to me cost them their lives, cost them their opportunity to be fathers throughout their kids' lives and or mothers throughout their kids' lives. So when someone asks me that question up front, the three names that pop in my head are Malcolm X first, James Baldwin second, and then of course, this is gonna be cheesy, maybe a little bit, I don't know, my dad. And I want to talk about, and all of those people know, Malcolm X and also James Baldwin, but my father, I want to talk about because that dude gave me marching orders without ever saying, you need to go do this, this, and this. He actually had no clue on what I needed to go do to be, a full human. I just know that he stood up every day in the face of what was and what is segregated America, racism. My father got his first felony for smacking a white man who was the son of the sharecropper who owned the farm, which his family was on, for hitting his mother. So to me, the idea of being quiet in the face of any type of suppression, oppression, or like fighting against inequality makes no sense, and it also gives me nightmares. Not in a like proverbial sense, but in like real life, I'll sit up and say, why didn't you say something about this harm to this set of people when you saw it happening? So because of my dad, like being able to stand upright every day as a man, you know, he has a cape.
Hey, Jason, can I say something real quick about that? Mondale brings up his pops a lot, man. And I gotta give him, like, I love my daddy too, but I gotta give a shout out to Mondale's pops, because that cat actually raised a dude, and he had a whole bunch of, how many brothers?
One of 13. I'm one of 13.
Yeah,
one of 13.
Yeah, no, that's real talk, man. Like
that's a starting line. This is a whole
with two fill-ins.
Right, exactly.
But let me say something.
You got some backup linemen with that. Yeah.
Let me say something that's even more better. He's still married to my mom. They still together. You know what I'm saying? And their relationship is not rooted in like Southern marriage in the traditional sense, because my mom and dad were only married when I was already an adult. They got married on their front porch. I was actually like my dad's best man and my mom's bridesmaid. If you like, I had both the rings on the porch after I ran around the back from cooking on the grill for the wedding. So like, I like to witness that means so much to me. Like, and like my need for Black love exists in their like relationship, and watching it grow from two young people with jerry curls partying on Saturdays and my dad being a part of a social club to them being these devout country Christians who goes to my father's youngest brother's church. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like I have this crazy love for Black love in the traditional sense, because of my parents and my siblings and how they shacked up and then married early. Even though you don't see that in my life. It's an amazing thing for me. And also, like I said, it gave my dad, but not just my dad, also my mom's cape. Like I remember like growing up on Saturdays, getting up early in the morning and my dad cooking, not just cooking, but getting up in my mom's moo-moo. My dad used to put on my mom's moo-moo and go cook and like straight up like and cook. Like, so like we had this, my dad who has no education, a third grade education, and he stayed dropped out of school because, you know, like between the time he would have to like stop going to school, it was like a month, 2 months at a time. And when he'd go back to school, the teacher would say, introduce yourself as a new student. And it was embarrassing to him. So it was just better for him to just go work on the farm with his dad. So I remember him telling me like crazy things like, you can't control a woman, so don't ever try. That thing shapes me still to this day. The second thing he told me was, the person you lie to controls you. He was picking his jerry curl about to go to the club and probably jump off gin when he said it. But it's so powerful, like about who I am and how I show up in the world. So yeah, that part.
Hey, Mondale and Jason, can I say this right here? And I also we're doing a show right now.
Right.
But I'm on with my friends.
Right.
So I want to say this right here. My friends tell me stories about their people, right? And they both do. Mondale has never told me the jerry curl story.
Yeah.
My dad had jerry curl, bro.
Yeah, but there's a jerry curl story.
If you ask him, it was juices and berries.
And Jason,
this is natural juice and berries.
And Jason has his own stories also. And we're not gonna go too far, because like we're actually on a chat right now, like discussing how long we keep y'all on.
So I want to say this. I want to add in my heroes. I want to add in my heroes to this before we wrap. You know, it's interesting. This was the case for me about 2 years ago. I remember doing this. Shout out to Chris Matthews when I was on Hardball. People asked me who my hero was, and I said it was my grandmother. My grandmother, Ida Clark, who was housing commissioner in Newark, New Jersey. She was an activist. She was politically involved for her entire life. My grandmother had pictures of her and every president from Carter up through Obama. of her with pictures of them all throughout her life. She would take busloads of seniors down to DC and advocate and protest and get arrested in Congress, fighting for affordable housing for seniors. There's a whole housing development named after, is an affordable housing development named after my grandmother, Ida Clark, in Newark, New Jersey, courtesy of, at the time, Mayor Cory Booker, because, now Senator Cory Booker was mayor at the time. So my grandmother always sort of been my hero because she did things that were above and beyond. My parents had my older brother when they were in high school. And so that's always been sort of heroism to me. It goes one step further. But I will say this, and it's very interesting when you guys are sort of talking about these stories and Mondale talking about his dad and everything else like that. I never really saw my parents as heroes. And there's probably a whole bunch of different reasons for that, but I never saw them as being particularly heroic. I always assumed that that's just what you did. I just assumed that you spent your life trying to make sure that your kids' lives were better. And so there were probably at some level, and yet it's not until I became an adult, even though I don't have any kids of my own, that you gain that appreciation for how hard my parents struggled. My parents, I never had any want growing up. I never had to worry about money. I never had to worry about going to college. Everything I knew pretty much. There was only one time in my entire life growing up that my parents ever talked to us about money, and it was when we were buying our next big house. So like I didn't have any financial concerns growing up as a kid. But what I see now as an adult, looking back on the level of stress that my parents dealt with in these majority white neighborhoods, the hostility they dealt with, the fact that our neighbors in the cul-de-sac where I grew up tried to pay off our real estate agent so that they wouldn't sell a house to a black family. Yes, that happened on Stonefield Drive in the 90s in Centerville, Virginia. Some of those people still live there. I think I gained a greater appreciation for what they went through. And yet, for me, that was never seen as heroic. That was just seen as what you have to do as a black person to survive in this country. So I say this because, Marcus mentioned his sort of superheroes. He mentioned Black Lightning, great show, watching on Netflix.
I don't know what that is.
Of course you don't.
But I have been watching how the Shades got their estates on the History Channel.
You would probably, honestly, Mondale, you would probably like Luke Cage more. You probably like Luke Cage.
Of course I like Luke Cage.
Yeah,
but
he would like Luke Cage on Netflix more than he would like Black Lightning.
Out of everything.
What era is Luke Cage from? Is he
right now, Negro?
Is he a superhero?
He is in a different way. In a different way.
I can go on all day.
So I'll say this, and as Marcus pointed out, I have nothing but I have black Funko Pops. I actually have a black superhero collection going back to the 50s and 60s. In my office, I don't allow anything. It's my creative space. I don't allow anything but images of black heroes. I have black artwork, black Superman.
Jason, no, I'm not letting you slide. You got to give us one.
I got to give you one
black superhero.
One black superhero that I'm super duper
fond of.
I mean, I gave my grandpa, but he wants like a sort of an abstract or a fictional one.
Marvel, DC, black superhero. Give him one.
All right, wait. I'll give you two real quick. One would be John Stewart. I love John Stewart, the Black Green Lantern. He's a former sniper. He's a Marine sniper and an architect. And he's Green Lantern.
I'm a Marine.
Hey, see, that's what I'm saying. I was like John
Mondale. Well done, sir.
I like Miles Morales, who's the Black Spider-Man who's got the powers. But I'll say this, and this is for a show I suggest all people sort of watch in the fall. Even though I don't think he always gets the attention he deserves on the show, I love Lucas on Stranger Things. That little black boy with all those white kids in the early 80s is the first time I've ever watched a show. All those kids are older than me, but like I see that show and I see my older brother. And I think of us growing up in the white suburbs outside of St. Louis in the 80s and the 90s and realizing that being that black kid who had imagination, who could come up with his own adventures and everything else like that was crucial at a time where we were told that the only thing we could do is be sidekicks for white people or play sports. And neither me or my brother were good at either of those things. So that being said, We want to make sure that we close up tonight. We're going to rotate every week, as we said. We're going to give somebody different a final thought. Yes, Monday.
Before we close up tonight, I want to mention this and watch the brothers' eyes light up, because this was a secret. I was going to save it for them like it was their birthdays, even though neither one of them Negroes told me happy birthday.
I was going to do that at the end. I was going to be at the end of the show.
I don't know. It's all good. Listen, I'm not even Facebook mad. I'm just real life mad. All right, don't worry about it. So I'm gonna smile on Facebook. We good. I'll talk to y'all afterwards. So we're gonna have a interview, a 5-minute interview for my closing on Thursday. And it's gonna be from a brother that y'all don't want to miss. Ivy Tolson. He's a dope brother around education. We're gonna talk about what Corona virus has done to Black education and how it's gonna set Black folk back. So that 5-minute education will air instead of me talking for the last 5 minutes of the show on Thursday. So that's a surprise to my brothers who I love, and I know they care about highly erudite brothers and sisters. So that's my gift to y'all, even though y'all didn't say happy birthday to me.
I was gonna say happy birthday in the show. Anyway, Marcus, you got 1 minute. Do your final thought, then we're gonna do our close. Lay it on.
Hey, listen, it's very simple, man. I love you, gentlemen. Mondale, very happy birthday. I wanted to put that in my minute because you mean the whole.
Well, go ahead and sing it then.
Stop talking in my minute.
Sing it.
Here's the very simple truth. My minute is basically dedicated to the DNC's neglect of African American men. All right, and this is the problem. You cannot send other folks for us and not realize that we are not interested in your crap. Black men listen to Black women, and Black men also listen to themselves. And to be honest with you, you're not in the barbershops enough to even know what the hell we're talking about. But you're trying
in the barbershops right now.
Tell us that we want to vote, we should vote, and you're trying to shame Black men into voting. You're trying to shame your former bucks. Yeah, I said it. Your former bucks, the people that you wanted to make bigger and stronger Black men. You're trying to shame us into voting, and that's never going to work. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out exactly what we are about, how we love, how we think, how we feel. And as soon as y'all do that, y'all might win the damn election. This is Marcus Farrell. I'm with Clickbaity.
Thank you so much, Marcus.
That advertisement is not approved by the crew. It's just Marcus. It's beautiful, but
I knew you were going to say that.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in to tonight's show. I asked every single person watching this evening, please wish Mondale a happy birthday. Apparently, we didn't wish him happy birthday soon enough. It was going to be part of the final.
Just sing it right now. Sing me out. Sing me out.
Happy birthday to Mondale. Happy birthday to Mondale. We do the Stevie Wonder version. That's pretty much all I can do.
Let's go.
Thank you guys so very much. You want to keep up with us, you can follow Mondale at where?
I am Mondale on all social media platforms.
You can follow Marcus at where?
Marcus for America. It's in my little link there.
You can follow me at Dr. Jason Johnson. Thank you so very much for your time. We will be putting these shows on YouTube soon, so check it out for our clips. Thanks so much. Please share, please appreciate, and please stay safe. Love each other. Coronavirus ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
Gang, 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 gang.
Gang, gang.
Trap squad, 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 trap squad. Hey, clickbaity political. Yeah, thirst trap, trap squad, squirrel squad. Our mission is critical to speak the truth to the masses. Yeah. We here for the fight. We ain't started, but we here to finish it. Sick and tired of seeing the privilege. Take advantage of the weak and the innocent. So we let a voice be heard. Every single weeknight. Unapologetic. Yeah. Black people, despite this white supremacist system that we live through on a daily, we still throwing up those acorns cause we represent clickbaity. Yeah. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad, let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you, yeah, I see you. Trap squad, trap squad, trap squad. Thirst trap, trap squad, trap squad, trap squad. Let me hear ya. Trap squad, trap squad. Throw those squirrels up if you with it. Trap squad, trap squad. Yeah, I see you.